I stood in the doorway of my childhood home holding eviction papers. My sister Sarah, once my best friend who betrayed me with my husband 3 years ago, stared back in shock. Baby toys scattered the floor where I once played as a child. My parents, who called me a homewrecker and cut me off, hovered behind Sarah. The house that cast me out now belonged to me. I came from nothing after losing everything, and today I owned the roof over their heads. 4 years ago, my life looked completely different. Sarah and I shared a cozy 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street, just 20 minutes from our parents' house. We'd been inseparable since we were kids, and even though I was 3 years older, we felt more like twins than regular sisters. Every Friday night, we'd order Chinese takeout and watch reality shows, laughing until our stomachs hurt. Sarah would paint my nails while I helped her swipe through dating apps, both of us dreaming about our futures. I worked as a junior marketing coordinator at a small firm downtown, but my real passion lived in the evening classes I took for my MBA. 3 nights a week, I'd rush from the office to the university, surviving on protein bars and sheer determination. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled to find her path. She dropped out of community college twice and cycled through retail jobs, each one ending when she felt unappreciated or bored. I never judged her for it. Some people just needed more time to figure things out. The coffee shop near campus became my second home. Between classes, I'd claim the corner table and spread my textbooks across the worn wooden surface. That Tuesday evening in October, the place buzzed with its usual crowd of exhausted graduate students. I just spilled my 3rd cup of coffee on my statistics homework when a voice offered me a stack of napkins. Rough night. James stood there with kind brown eyes and a sympathetic smile. He wore a crisp button-down despite the late hour, clearly coming from some corporate job. We started talking, and I learned he worked as a financial analyst at a firm across town. He admired my ambition, he said. Not many people would put themselves through graduate school while working full-time. Our first date happened by accident. We bumped into each other at the same coffee shop the following week, and he offered to quiz me for my economics exam. 2 hours later, we were still talking, the conversation flowing from market trends to our favorite hiking trails to our dreams for the future. James wanted stability, a house in the suburbs, maybe kids someday. I wanted to build something meaningful with my career. First, then add the family part. He said he understood. He said ambitious women were the most interesting kind. Sarah squealed when I told her about him. She demanded to see pictures, proclaimed him gorgeous, and immediately started planning what she'd wear to our wedding. I threw a pillow at her, but secretly I was already falling hard. James pursued me with steady intention. He'd text good morning messages before my early meetings, leave surprise lattes on my desk during particularly stressful weeks, and never once complained when I had to reschedule dates for study groups. By spring, we were inseparable. He met my parents at Easter dinner, charming my mother with compliments about her ham and impressing my father with his knowledge of baseball statistics. Sarah flirted harmlessly the way she did with everyone, and James handled it with grace. Afterward, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. "He's wonderful, Emily," she said, drying dishes with practiced efficiency. "Don't let this one get away." The proposal came 8 months after our first conversation. Nothing fancy, just the 2 of us on a sunset hike at our favorite trail. He got down on one knee right as the sky turned gold, and I said yes, before he could even finish asking. Sarah screamed louder than I did when I showed her the ring. Planning the wedding while finishing my MBA pushed me to my limits, but Sarah stepped up as my maid of honor. She handled vendor calls during my classes, assembled centerpieces on weekends, and kept me sane when the florist canceled 2 weeks before the big day. Our parents' backyard transformed into a fairy tale setting with twinkling lights and white roses. Only 50 guests, just our closest family and friends. The ceremony unfolded like a dream. Sarah looked stunning in her lavender bridesmaid dress, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. She dabbed at her eyes during our vows, and I remember feeling grateful to have a sister who loved me so deeply. During the reception, she gave a toast that had everyone reaching for tissues. "Emily has always been my role model," she said, raising her champagne glass. "She works harder than anyone I know and still makes time for everyone she loves. James, You're the luckiest man alive. Take care of my sister." The dance floor filled as the sun set. James spun me around, whispering promises about our future while our families celebrated around us. I noticed Sarah dancing with James's cousin, but she kept glancing our way. At the time, I thought she was just being a protective sister, making sure I was happy. Her eyes lingered on James during the cake cutting, watched him during our first dance. I brushed it off as wedding day emotions. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon suite downtown, Sarah hugged me tighter than usual. "You deserve all of this," she whispered in my ear. "Every bit of happiness." The last guest departed, and James and I drove away in his decorated car cans rattling behind us. In the hotel room, as I stepped out of my wedding dress, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Hope you're having the most magical night. Love you both so much." But when I showed James the sweet message, his face did something strange. A flicker of discomfort, maybe guilt, passed across his features. He was scrolling through his own phone, and I caught a glimpse of his messages before he locked the screen. Sarah's name appeared multiple times in his recent texts. "Everything okay?" I asked, hanging my dress carefully in the closet. "Of course," he said, setting his phone aside. "Just friends and family sending congratulations." I climbed into bed beside my new husband, pushing away the tiny seed of unease. Sarah and James had become friends during the wedding planning. That was natural, wonderful, even. My two favorite people getting along would only make our lives easier. But as James pulled me close, I couldn't shake the image of those text messages. Row after row of Sarah's name on his screen. When had they exchanged numbers? Why were they texting on our wedding night? "Actually," James said suddenly, as if reading my thoughts, "Sarah was just checking that we made it to the hotel safely. She was worried about us driving after drinking champagne. You know how she is." I did know how she was. Sarah worried about everyone, especially me. The explanation made perfect sense. I curled into my husband's arms, telling myself I was being paranoid. The stress of wedding planning and graduate school had made me see problems where none existed. Sarah loved me. James loved me. Everything in my life was finally falling into place. Outside our hotel window, the city lights glittered with promise. Tomorrow we'd fly to Hawaii for a week of paradise before returning to start our married life. I had my sister, my husband, my family, my education, and my career. What could possibly go wrong 6 months after our Hawaiian honeymoon married life had settled into a comfortable rhythm? I'd wake at 5:30 each morning, kiss James goodbye as he mumbled sleepily, and head to the gym before work. My days blurred together in a whirlwind of client meetings, campaign proposals, and graduate school assignments. 3 nights a week, I'd rush straight from the office to campus, eating granola bars in traffic while reviewing my notes. James seemed supportive, though he'd started making small comments. Another late night, he'd ask when I'd stumble home at 10 o'clock, textbooks weighing down my shoulder bag. "I barely see you anymore." I'd apologize, promise it was temporary, just until I finished my degree. He'd nod and heat up the dinner he'd eaten alone. The call came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Sarah's voice trembled through the phone as I sat in my cubicle reviewing marketing analytics. "I lost my job again," she said. "The manager at the boutique said I wasn't a good fit for their brand image. Can you believe that I showed up every single day for 3 weeks?" I closed my eyes, pushing down frustration. This was her 4th job in 6 months. "I'm sorry, Sarah. What happened?" "Nothing happened. She just didn't like me. Said I spent too much time on my phone and came back late from breaks, but everyone does that." Her voice pitched higher. "Mom and Dad can't help me with rent this month. They're already stretched thin with Dad's medical bills from his back surgery." The solution came from James that evening. We were eating takeout Thai food in our living room, and I'd mentioned Sarah's situation. He set down his pad Thai, looking thoughtful. "Why doesn't she stay with us for a while?" he suggested. "Just until she gets back on her feet. We have that spare bedroom doing nothing but collecting dust." I hesitated, twirling noodles on my fork. Living with Sarah again felt like stepping backward, but she was my sister. "Are you sure it might be a few months before she finds something stable?" "Family helps family. James said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Besides, she could help around the house while you're busy with school. Maybe cook some real dinners instead of all this takeout. The logic made sense. Sarah moved in that weekend with 3 suitcases and grateful tears. She threw her arms around James, thanking him for being the best brother-in-law in the world. He patted her back awkwardly, shooting me a smile over her shoulder. At first, everything seemed perfect. I'd come home from late classes to find the apartment spotless, laundry folded, and dinner warming in the oven. Sarah had discovered a talent for cooking, experimenting with recipes she found online. She'd greet me with stories about her day job applications. She'd submitted funny videos she'd watched. The apartment felt livelier with her there. But subtle shifts began almost immediately. Sarah started dressing differently. Instead of her usual loungewear, she'd wear sundresses around the house, full makeup by noon. When I commented on it, she laughed. I read that getting dressed properly helps with job search motivation. She explained adjusting a dress that looked suspiciously like one from my closet. Besides, I can't look like a slob when you two come home all professional. Her cooking became elaborate productions timed precisely for James's arrival. She'd have appetizers ready at 6:15 just as his key turned in the lock. The table would be set with our wedding china candles, lit music playing softly. I'd stumble in an hour or two later to find them laughing over empty wine glasses, my plate covered in foil. "We tried to wait," Sarah would say apologetically, but everything was getting cold. One evening, I arrived home earlier than expected after my professor canceled class. Soft jazz floated from the kitchen where Sarah stood at the stove, wearing my favorite black dress, the one I'd worn to my company holiday party. James sat at the counter, tie loosened, watching her cook with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Emily." Sarah spun around, nearly dropping her wooden spoon. "You're home early. I was just telling James about this crazy interview I had today." "In my dress." The words came out sharper than intended. Her cheeks flushed. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had an interview this afternoon at that upscale restaurant downtown, and I panicked because none of my clothes seemed nice enough. I was going to ask, but you'd already left for work." "It's fine," I said, though something cold settled in my stomach. "How did the interview go?" She launched into a story about the restaurant manager while I changed clothes, but I noticed she never quite explained why she was still wearing my dress at 7 in the evening, or why she'd chosen the one that showed the most skin. Weekend dynamics shifted too. Sarah inserted herself into every activity. Saturday morning, farmers market trips became a threesome. Sunday brunches with James's parents included a fourth-place setting. Movie nights on the couch ended with Sarah wedged between us, sharing our popcorn bowl. "I feel like such a third wheel," she'd say while making no move to give us space. "You two are just so perfect together. I hope I find something like this someday." My study group met at our apartment one Wednesday evening. We'd spread materials across the dining room table, deep in discussion about supply chain management, when Sarah emerged from her room. She wore yoga pants and a sports bra hair in a messy bun that somehow looked artfully arranged. "Don't mind me," she chirped, bending deeply to retrieve something from a low cabinet. "Just grabbing a snack." My male classmates lost focus immediately. Sarah chatted with them briefly, laughing at their jokes, touching shoulders, as she reached across the table for grapes. After she finally retreated to her room, the study session never quite recovered. "Your sister's really something," one of them commented as they packed up to leave. "Is she seeing anyone?" James worked late more often, texting apologies about client dinners and deadline pressures. Sarah would keep me company, painting our nails and gossiping like old times. But her conversation increasingly centered on James, how thoughtful he was, how handsome, how lucky I was. "You really hit the jackpot," she said one night, blowing on freshly painted fingernails. "A man who supports your dreams and looks like that if you ever get tired of him." She trailed off laughing. I forced myself to laugh too. Then came the day I'll never forget. A morning lecture got canceled at the last minute due to a professor's family emergency. Instead of heading to the library, I decided to go home and grab materials I'd forgotten. The apartment building sat quiet at 11 on a Tuesday morning. I climbed the stairs, mind already on the afternoon's presentations. My key slid silently into the lock. I pushed open the door, calling out, "Sarah, I'm just grabbing some files." No response. Her bedroom door stood open, bed unmade. I walked toward our bedroom to retrieve my folders from the desk. The door was cracked, and through the gap, I saw movement. Sarah stood in front of our full-length mirror, and my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. White lace, delicate silk. The lingerie set James had given me for Valentine's Day, the one I'd only worn once. She turned sideways, running her hands over the fabric, admiring herself from different angles. I must have made a sound because she whipped around, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, we just stared at each other, my little sister wearing my wedding lingerie in my bedroom. "Emily." She grabbed my robe from the bed, wrapping it around herself. "Oh my God, this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Because it looks like you're trying on my lingerie, the set my husband gave me." Tears immediately pooled in her eyes. "I know how this must seem. I was doing laundry and I saw it in your drawer and I've never owned anything so beautiful. I wanted to see how it would feel to wear something so expensive, just for a second. So you went through my drawers." "The drawer was already open. I was putting your clothes away trying to help." She clutched the robe tighter. "I'm so embarrassed. Please don't tell James. He already thinks I'm such a mess." The tears looked real. The explanation almost made sense. Sarah had always coveted my things, even as children. I'd find her trying on my prom dress, borrowing my jewelry without asking. This was just another version of the same behavior. "Just take it off," I said finally, "and stay out of our room." She nodded frantically, backing toward the bathroom. "I'm so sorry, Emily. It won't happen again, I promise." I grabbed my folders and left, skipping the library to sit in my car in the campus parking lot. My hands shook as I tried to process what I'd witnessed. The image wouldn't leave my mind. Sarah in white lace admiring herself in the mirror where I got dressed every morning. The lingerie that was meant to be special, intimate between James and me. Was I overreacting? She was my sister. She'd always had boundary issues, but this felt different. The cooking, the dresses, the lingerie. A pattern was emerging that I didn't want to see. That evening, I said nothing to James. Sarah acted extra helpful, setting the table with origami napkins, complimenting my presentation skills, asking James about his day with just the right amount of polite interest. Normal sister-in-law behavior, nothing inappropriate. But when she handed him his dinner plate, their fingers brushed. And this time, I was watching. This time I saw how she let the contact linger just a beat too long. This time I noticed how James's ears turned pink. I pushed food around my plate, Sarah's explanation echoing in my mind. Just trying it on for fun. Just wanted to see how it felt, just for a second. The first crack in my marriage was hairline thin, barely visible, but I could feel it spreading spiderwebbing through the foundation of everything I'd built. I just didn't know yet how deep it would go, or how much it would cost me to pretend I couldn't see it, growing wider every day. The email arrived on a Monday morning that had already started badly. James and I had argued over breakfast about my schedule, Sarah had used the last of my expensive shampoo, and traffic made me 15 minutes late to work. But when I opened my laptop and saw the message from Peterson Enterprises, everything else faded away. "Congratulations, Emily. We're pleased to offer you the strategic marketing internship position." 6 months of applications, 3 rounds of interviews, and 1 nerve-wracking presentation had led to this moment. Peterson Enterprises represented everything I'd worked toward. A Fortune 500 company with a marketing department that set industry standards. The internship was unpaid but would provide invaluable experience and connections. The catch evening hours 3 times per week, plus occasional weekends. I called James, immediately buzzing with excitement. His response felt measured, careful. "That's great, honey," he said, his voice competing with background office noise. "But 3 nights a week on top of your classes. When will you be home?" "It's only for 4 months." I explained, pacing the empty conference room where I'd taken refuge. This could change everything for my career. A pause stretched between us. We'll figure it out. Sarah's here to help anyway. That evening, I shared the news over dinner. Sarah's congratulations rang hollow as she refilled James's wine glass for the third time. She'd made coq au vin, a dish that must have taken hours presented on our best plates, with garnishes that belonged in a restaurant. So you'll be gone Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights now. Sarah tallied on her fingers. Plus Tuesday and Thursday classes. The internship is only until 9. I said, defensive without knowing why. I'll be home by 9:30. James cut his chicken with precise movements. That's if traffic cooperates, and if they don't keep you late. They will, Sarah added softly. These big companies always expect more than they say. My friend worked at a similar place and practically lived there. I looked between them, something shifting in the room's dynamics. When had they become a united front? When had my achievements become inconveniences? This is a huge opportunity, I said. Professor Williams thinks they might offer me a full-time position after graduation. Of course it is. James's smile didn't reach his eyes. I just miss my wife. Sarah stood to clear plates, her hand briefly touching James's shoulder. Don't worry. I'll make sure you don't starve while Emily conquers the corporate world. The internship exceeded every expectation. I worked with brilliant minds on campaigns for major brands, attended strategy meetings where millions of dollars hung on single decisions, and found mentors who pushed me beyond my comfort zone. My supervisor, Patricia Chen, became everything I aspired to be, sharp, successful, and somehow balancing a thriving career with raising twin daughters. The key, she told me one evening as we reviewed analytics reports, is having a partner who sees your success as their success too. My husband celebrates my wins harder than I do. I nodded, thinking of James's lukewarm reception to my latest project approval. He'd been asleep on the couch when I got home at 10:15, Sarah curled up on the opposite end watching a romantic comedy. They'd ordered pizza but hadn't saved me any. 3 weeks into the internship, Professor Williams pulled me aside after class. His usually serious face broke into a rare smile. Emily, I have extraordinary news. The Journal of Marketing Excellence wants to publish your thesis on digital consumer behavior, with some revisions, of course. My knees nearly buckled. Academic publication as a graduate student was almost unheard of. It would set me apart in any job search, open doors I hadn't dared imagine. The revisions would require significant additional work, late nights in the library, weekend writing sessions. But how could I say no? This is what separates good marketers from great ones, Professor Williams continued. The willingness to go above and beyond. I'm proud of you. I floated home mentally, reorganizing my schedule to accommodate the revisions. Sarah's car sat in my usual parking spot, forcing me to park a block away. Small annoyances like this had become routine. Using my products, taking my spaces, claiming territories that weren't hers. Inside, candles flickered on the dining table. Sarah had outdone herself again. Some sort of pasta dish that belonged in a food magazine, complete with fresh herbs and homemade bread. She wore another of my dresses, the blue one James had bought me for my birthday. We already ate, she announced, not meeting my eyes. James had a hard day and needed to decompress. Your plate's in the microwave. I found them on the couch watching another movie, sitting closer than necessary on the large sectional. Sarah's legs were tucked under her, angled toward James. He stared at the screen with determined focus. My thesis is being published, I announced to the room. James muted the television. Published? What does that mean? I explained about the journal, the prestige, the career implications. Sarah's face cycled through emotions I couldn't interpret. James's frown deepened with each detail. So more work, he summarized. More time away from home. It's not like that, I protested. This is huge. Do you understand what this means for my future? Our future, he corrected. Remember, we're married. Your decisions affect both of us. Sarah shifted her knee, briefly touching James's leg. Maybe you could do the revisions from home. That way you could be around more. The research materials are at the university library, and I need quiet to focus. Right. Sarah's voice carried an edge. because we're so loud and distracting. That weekend, my parents invited us for Sunday dinner. I almost declined needing to work on my thesis, but James insisted. Family time was important, he said. We couldn't neglect relationships for career ambitions. We arrived to find the dining room table extended Mom's best china gleaming. Pot roast filled the house with familiar scents. Dad hugged me briefly before turning his attention to James discussing football while I helped in the kitchen. "You look tired," Mom observed, handing me potatoes to mash. "All this school and work. Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine, just busy with exciting things." She hummed non-committally. Through the kitchen window, I watched Sarah in the backyard laughing at something James had said. When had they become so comfortable together? During dinner, the conversation stayed surface level until Mom cleared her throat meaningfully. "Sarah tells us you're never home anymore," she said, passing the green beans. "That can't be good for a new marriage." I nearly choked on my water. "Sarah tells you—" "We talk every day," Sarah confirmed, not looking up from her plate. "Mom likes to know how everyone's doing." "And what I'm hearing concerns me," Mom continued. "James is a good man, patient, understanding. But every man has limits." Dad nodded sagely. "Your career won't keep you warm at night, Princess." "My career is important to me," I said carefully. "James knew that when he married me." "People change," Sarah murmured. "Priorities shift. Sometimes what we think we want isn't what we really need." James reached for the salt, his wedding ring catching the light. "I support Emily's ambitions. I just wish they left more time for us." The rest of dinner passed in strained politeness. During dessert, Sarah mentioned she'd started taking cooking classes at the community center. James praised her dedication, saying her culinary skills had transformed their eating habits. They discussed recipes while my mother beamed approval and I pushed apple pie around my plate. Driving home, the silence stretched until James finally spoke. "Your family's worried about you." "They're worried about you," I corrected. "About whether you're being properly taken care of." "Is that so wrong for a wife to take care of her husband?" "I do take care of you, just not with elaborate dinners every night." He pulled into our apartment complex, parking in the spot I usually used. Sarah's car occupied the space closer to the door. "I found something today," he said quietly, not moving to get out. "While looking for stamps in your desk." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Birth control pills, in Sarah's bathroom drawer, hidden behind towels." The world tilted. "You were in Sarah's bathroom." "The main bathroom was out of toilet paper, but that's not the point." He turned to face me. "Why would she hide birth control? She hasn't dated anyone since moving in." A reasonable question, a concerning discovery. But all I could focus on was James casually admitting he'd been in Sarah's private space going through her belongings. "Maybe she's planning ahead," I offered weakly, "or has someone she hasn't mentioned." "Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. We climbed the stairs in silence. Inside, Sarah had dessert waiting. Homemade tiramisu, because of course she did. She'd changed into pajamas, fresh-faced and innocent-looking. "How was dinner with the parents?" she asked brightly. "Did Mom make her famous pot roast?" "It was enlightening," I said, accepting a plate I didn't want. "Apparently you talk to her every day." "Is that weird? She's my mom too." Sarah licked cream from her spoon. "Someone has to keep her updated since you're always so busy." The tiramisu was perfect. Everything Sarah made was perfect. Perfect food for my perfect husband in my perfect home that increasingly felt like a stage where I'd forgotten my lines. I excused myself to work on my thesis, leaving them to their dessert, and whatever easy conversation flowed when I wasn't there to complicate things with my ambitions and achievements. In the spare room I'd converted to an office, I stared at my laptop screen. The cursor blinked accusingly on a blank page. 20 pages of revisions needed by month's end. A full-time job that demanded excellence. An internship that could launch my career. A marriage growing colder by the day. A sister whose motivations blurred like watercolors in rain. Through the thin walls, I heard laughter. Sarah's bright giggle. James's deeper rumble. The clink of plates being washed together. domestic harmony playing out while I sat alone with my ambitions. I opened my planner counting days until the internship ended, until graduation, until Sarah found a job and moved out, until life returned to normal. But watching dates march across calendar squares, I wondered if normal had already slipped away, if it had started dissolving the day Sarah arrived with her suitcases and grateful tears. My phone buzzed, an email from Patricia at Peterson Enterprises. Excellent work on the Morrison campaign. The client specifically praised your innovation. Let's discuss your future with the company next week. I should have felt elated. Instead, I felt the weight of success pressing down like a stone. Every achievement pushed me further from the life everyone expected me to live. Every accolade became evidence of my failure as a wife. But I forwarded the email to Professor Williams anyway, added a meeting with Patricia to my calendar, returned to my thesis revisions. Because if I was going to lose everything else, at least I'd have the career I'd sacrificed it all to build. Through the walls, the laughter continued. My husband and my sister finding joy in my absence, the sound of a future I couldn't quite see, yet gathering like storm clouds on a clear day. All I could do was keep typing, building my arc of accomplishments before the flood arrived. The days blurred together as November crept toward December. My thesis defense loomed just 3 weeks away, and I lived on coffee and determination. The apartment became a maze of textbooks, printed research papers, and sticky notes, covering every surface of my makeshift office. Some nights I fell asleep at my desk, waking with keyboard imprints on my cheek and Sarah's concerned face hovering above me. "You're killing yourself," she'd say, draping a blanket over my shoulders. "James is worried sick." But James seemed less worried and more absent. Client dinners stretched later. Weekend golf games with colleagues became mandatory networking. He'd arrive home after 11, sliding into bed, reeking of whiskey and expensive cologne. When I tried to share my thesis progress, his eyes would glaze over. "That's great, honey," became his standard response, always followed by a jaw-cracking yawn. The morning of our anniversary arrived with Seattle's typical December drizzle. 2 years married. I'd made reservations at Chez Laurent, the French restaurant, where we'd celebrated my first promotion. A small gift waited in my purse. Nothing elaborate, just a watch he'd admired months ago. I texted him a reminder at lunch. His response came 3 hours later. "Shit, emergency client meeting tonight, rain check." I canceled the reservation from my office desk, watching Patricia's team celebrate a successful campaign launch in the conference room. Through the glass, their champagne toasts and laughter felt like scenes from someone else's life. My own celebration would wait for a more convenient time, always waiting. Sarah had prepared a feast when I arrived home at 7. Roasted duck with cherry sauce, baby potatoes, vegetables arranged like art. She'd even baked a small cake decorated with "Happy Anniversary" in delicate script. "I thought you two might want to celebrate at home instead." She explained, adjusting the candles she'd lit, more intimate than a crowded restaurant. "James isn't coming. Work emergency." Her face fell with practiced sympathy. "Oh, Emily, on your anniversary, that's awful." We ate in relative silence, the empty third place setting accusatory. Sarah kept refilling my wine glass, chattering about her latest job interviews. A funny thing she'd seen at the grocery store, anything to fill the void. Around 9, she produced the cake with 2 lit candles. "Make a wish," she urged. I closed my eyes, wishing for too many things. For my husband to choose us over work. For my sister to find her own life. For the strength to survive 3 more weeks until graduation. The candles went out in a single breath. "What did you wish for?" Sarah asked. "Can't tell you, then it won't come true." She smiled sadly. "Some wishes don't come true anyway." James stumbled in after midnight, apologizing sloppily. I pretended to be asleep, listening as he crashed around the bathroom. The mattress dipped with his weight, but he stayed on his side, an ocean of cold sheets between us. In the darkness, I wondered when we'd become strangers who happened to share a bed. The next evening, I stayed late in the library, surrounded by research materials. My phone buzzed with texts from Sarah about dinner getting cold, but I couldn't face another performance of domestic bliss. Around 10, I finally packed up exhaustion, making my movements clumsy. The apartment windows glowed warmly as I approached. Through the sheer curtains, I could see movement in the living room. I climbed the stairs quietly, keys ready, but paused at the sound of voices floating through the door. "Can't keep doing this." James's voice thick with something I couldn't identify. "Doing what?" Sarah's response artificially innocent. "You know what? The dinners, the touching the looks. Emily's not stupid." My hand froze on the doorknob. Through the gap under the door, shadows moved. "I don't know what you mean." Sarah's voice dropped lower. "I'm just trying to help. You're both so unhappy." "That's between me and my wife." "Your wife who's never here, who prioritizes everything else above you." A pause. "I see how lonely you are, James. I'm lonely too." "Sarah, please." "Please what? Please stop caring about you. Please pretend I don't notice how she takes you for granted." I should have burst in, should have confronted them. Instead, I stood frozen, ear pressed to wood like a character in the soap operas Sarah loved. "You're twisting things," James said weakly. "Emily loves me." Love isn't just a word, it's actions, presence. When's the last time she cooked for you? Asked about your day without checking her phone? Made you feel like a priority? The silence stretched so long I thought they'd moved to another room. Then Sarah spoke again, so quiet I almost missed it. "I would never make you feel second best." My key scraped in the lock, loud as a gunshot. By the time I opened the door, they stood on opposite sides of the room, James by the window, Sarah near the kitchen. Both looked guilty caught, though technically they'd done nothing wrong. Just talking. Just standing in my living room having conversations about my marriage. "Hey," I said, setting my bag down with deliberate calm. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Sarah chirped. "James just got home. I kept dinner warm for you both." "I'm not hungry." I looked at James, who studied the carpet intently. "Long day." He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, you..." "Productive. My defense preparation is almost complete." "That's good." He moved toward the bedroom. "I'm going to shower." Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, clanging dishes unnecessarily. I stood between them in my own home, feeling like an intruder. The walls held secrets now, conversations that happened in my absence, connections forming while I chased dreams they didn't share. That night, I lay awake analyzing every interaction from the past months. Sarah's arrival, the elaborate dinners, the lingerie incident, James's distance. The pieces formed a picture I didn't want to see, but maybe I was paranoid. Maybe stress was making me imagine things. Maybe my sister and husband had simply become friends, bonding over my absence. The next few days passed in careful avoidance. I left early, returned late, buried myself in work. Sarah maintained her helpful facade, but something had shifted. She watched me now, calculating. James grew more distant, working late every night that week. Friday afternoon, I decided to surprise him. My meeting ended early and I picked up Thai food from his favorite place. Maybe we could reconnect over pad CEW and honest conversation. The security guard at his building waved me through with a smile. His office sat dark and empty. His assistant had left for the day, but she'd mentioned James leaving around 3 for a client meeting. I tried his cell, straight to voicemail. Driving home, unease twisted my stomach. The Thai food cooled in the passenger seat as rain pelted the windshield. I parked and climbed the stairs, takeout bags balanced precariously. This time, I made no effort to be quiet. The apartment was silent. No cooking smells. No background television. Sarah's door stood open, room empty. Relief and worry battled in my chest. Maybe she'd finally gone on one of those interviews she constantly mentioned. I set the food on the counter and moved toward our bedroom to change clothes. The door was closed, unusual for the afternoon. I pushed it open. My brain couldn't process the scene immediately. Hair on my pillows, blonde hair spread across the navy pillowcases I'd bought last month. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was recognizing the pattern of Sarah's breathing, heavy with sleep tangled in my sheets. Alone, but the bed showed clear evidence of 2 bodies. The indentation on James's side still warm. My gasp woke her. She sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, eyes wide with practiced innocence. "Emily, you're home early." "Get out!" My voice came from somewhere deep primal. "Get out of my bed." "It's not what you think." She scrambled for her clothes, my robe, always my things. "I had a terrible migraine. The apartment was so bright, and your room has those blackout curtains." "Where's James?" "James, I don't know. Working." She'd managed to wrap herself in my robe, standing now defensive. "Why would I know where your husband is?" I pointed to the bed. 2 pillows disturbed. Both sides clearly slept on. "You're being crazy. I move around when I sleep." She pushed past me. "I can't believe you're accusing me of—" "God, Emily, I'm your sister." She fled to her room, slamming the door. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the rumpled sheets, inhaling the mixture of her perfume and his cologne. My safe space violated. My sanctuary turned crime scene. With shaking hands, I stripped the bed-stuffing sheets into the washing machine. The Thai food sat forgotten on the counter. My phone rang. James. "Hey, sorry I missed your call. Client ran late. Should I pick up dinner?" "I brought Thai." My voice sounded normal. How did it sound normal? "Where are you?" "Just leaving the office now. Be home in 20. The office he'd left at 3. The meeting that lasted 6 hours. The lies that fell from his lips like autumn leaves. I hung up without responding. When James arrived, I was sitting at the kitchen table with 2 plates of cold Thai food. Sarah had emerged from her room fully dressed and makeup perfect. She busied herself wiping clean counters, avoiding my gaze. "Smells good," James said, kissing my cheek. His lips felt like betrayal. "Sorry about the late meeting. You know how clients can be." "Which client?" I asked pleasantly. He paused, hanging his jacket. "Morrison Industries, finalizing the Q4 campaign." "Funny. I had lunch with Patricia today. She mentioned Morrison approved everything yesterday." The silence stretched taut. Sarah dropped a glass in the sink. It shattered the sound explosive in the quiet apartment. "I'm so clumsy," she laughed nervously, reaching for paper towels. "Don't," I stood. "Don't touch anything else of mine." I walked to our bedroom, closing the door firmly behind me. Through the thin walls, I heard urgent whispers, James's deeper tones mixing with Sarah's higher pitch. Plotting, planning, deciding how to handle the wife who'd become an inconvenience to their growing bond. I sat on the freshly made bed, my thesis defense 3 weeks away, my marriage crumbling like ancient paper, my sister's betrayal as clear as the blonde hair I'd found on my husband's pillow. The funny thing was, I still had to finish my presentation, still had to wake up tomorrow and pretend everything was fine until I could figure out what to do with the shattered pieces of my life. My phone buzzed, an email from Professor Williams. "Emily, your thesis draft is exceptional. You're going to blow the committee away. So proud of your dedication." I laughed, the sound brittle and strange. All that dedication, all that work, building a future while my present dissolved like sugar in rain. On the nightstand, my wedding photo smiled back at me, Sarah as my maid of honor, glowing with happiness. Or was it anticipation? Had she always wanted what was mine? Through the door, I heard the front door close, one of them leaving. The apartment settled into uneasy quiet. Tomorrow I'd have to face whatever came next. But tonight I sat in my violated bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of trust and love, wondering how I'd miss the moment my life became a tragedy dressed up like a romantic comedy. The kind where everyone gets what they want, except the woman who was too busy achieving her dreams to notice she was losing everything else. The 3 weeks between finding Sarah in my bed and my thesis defense passed in a blur of purposeful denial. I threw myself into preparation with manic intensity, surviving on 4 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline. If my marriage was ending, at least I'd have my degree. If my family was fracturing, I'd build a career worth the sacrifice. James and I moved around each other like ghosts sharing a haunted house. He slept on the couch most nights, claiming my late-night typing kept him awake. Sarah maintained her innocence with wounded dignity, playing the misunderstood sister to perfection. She still cooked elaborate meals I didn't eat, still wore my clothes while swearing she'd asked permission I didn't remember giving. The morning of my defense, I dressed carefully in my best suit, navy blue, the one that made me feel powerful and capable. James had already left for work, but Sarah sat at the kitchen table picking at a bowl of yogurt. "Good luck today," she offered, not meeting my eyes. "I know how much this means to you." "Thanks." I grabbed my coffee, checking my presentation one final time. "Emily." She stood wringing her hands. "Whatever happens after today, I want you to know I love you. You're my sister. That means everything to me." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a preemptive apology for something yet to come. I left without responding, driving to campus through Seattle's perpetual drizzle. The defense went flawlessly. 2 hours of presenting my research, fielding questions, defending my methodology. The committee praised my innovation, my thorough analysis, my professional presentation. When they called me back to announce I'd passed with distinction, Professor Williams actually hugged me. "Exceptional work, Emily. This is just the beginning for you." I sat in my car afterward, holding my degree completion paperwork, waiting to feel something. Joy, pride, relief. Instead, numbness spread through my chest. I'd achieved everything I'd worked for, and I had no one to celebrate with who genuinely cared. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "How did it go?" "Passed with distinction," I typed back. "That's great. Working late tonight. Don't wait up." No exclamation points. No offer to celebrate. No suggestion we toast my success. Just another night alone while he worked late at the job I increasingly suspected was a cover story. I drove home, slowly stopping at a wine shop to buy champagne. If no one else would celebrate with me, I'd toast myself. The apartment stairs felt steeper than usual, exhaustion finally catching up. 3 years of graduate school while working full-time, over, done, accomplished. Inside the apartment sat dark and quiet. Sarah's door was closed, light seeping underneath. I poured champagne in the kitchen, raising my glass to the empty room. "To Dr. Emily Chen," I whispered to myself, "who gained a title and lost everything else." The champagne tasted bitter. I left the bottle on the counter and headed to the bedroom, desperate for sleep. Maybe tomorrow would bring clarity. Maybe James and I could talk, really talk about saving our marriage. Maybe Sarah would find a job and move out. Maybe everything could still be fixed. I pushed open the bedroom door and froze. The bed wasn't empty. 2 forms under the covers interrupted mid-embrace, scrambling apart like guilty teenagers. But these weren't teenagers. This was my husband and my sister in my bed, their betrayal no longer deniable. "Emily," Sarah gasped, yanking the sheet up to cover herself. "You're home early." "It's 4 in the afternoon," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I live here." James sat up, running his hands through disheveled hair. "Emily, wait. This isn't... We can explain." "Explain what? How long you've been sleeping with my sister? How you've been having an affair in my own bed while I was earning my degree?" "It's not an affair," Sarah said quietly. "We're in love." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "We're in love, not sorry, not ashamed. A declaration." "How long?" I asked. James looked at Sarah, some silent communication passing between them. 8 months, he finally admitted. 8 months, I counted backward. Since April. Since right after Sarah moved in. All those elaborate dinners, those movie nights while I studied those times, I came home to find them laughing together. 8 months of deception served with homemade pasta and expertly crafted lies. The birth control. I said, understanding flooding through me. The texts on our wedding night. You've been planning this from the beginning. Sarah's tears started then, perfectly timed. I never meant for it to happen. You were always busy, always gone. James was lonely. I was just trying to help, to be supportive. We spent so much time together and feelings developed. Feelings developed. I laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. In my home, while I was working to build our future. What future? James finally found his voice, anger replacing guilt. The one where I come third after your job and your degree, where I eat dinner alone every night, where my wife is too tired to talk, too busy to care. So you slept with my sister. That's your solution. At least she sees me. He threw off the covers, reaching for his clothes. At least she makes me feel like I matter. I cooked for him, Sarah added, as if that justified everything. I listened to him. I made this apartment a home while you turned it into an office. You were supposed to be looking for a job, not stealing my husband. You can't steal what's already been abandoned. Sarah shot back, then caught herself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But she did. Every word carefully chosen, every action deliberately planned. My sister, who I'd housed and fed and supported, had methodically inserted herself into my marriage until she fit better than I did. There's more, James said quietly. Sarah's pregnant. The room tilted. I gripped the doorframe, processing this final blow. The pregnancy test I'd found weeks ago. Not a false alarm, not a mistake. My sister carrying my husband's child. How far along? My voice came from very far away. 6 weeks, Sarah whispered. We didn't plan it. Like you didn't plan the affair. Like you didn't plan to move in. Like you didn't plan any of this. I walked to the closet, pulling out a suitcase with mechanical movements. They watched as I packed, grabbing essentials without thought. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the thesis I'd defended hours ago. Emily, don't go, Sarah pleaded. We need to talk about this, figure out how to move forward. Move forward. I paused in my packing. You want me to help plan your future with my husband? Maybe I should throw you a baby shower too. That's not what she meant, James intervened. We know this is a shock. We wanted to tell you differently. When after the baby was born, after you'd completely erased me from my own life, I zipped the suitcase closed. In the doorway, I turned back to look at them. My husband and sister sitting in my bed, already building their life together on the foundation of my betrayal. I need you to know something, I said. I loved you both, trusted you completely, and you used that trust to destroy me. That baby you're having, it's built on lies and selfishness. Remember that. Sarah's tears intensified. Please don't leave like this. You're my sister. I need you. You needed me to pay your rent and provide a hunting ground for your next conquest. Mission accomplished. Emily. James stood, perhaps finally realizing the magnitude of what they'd done. Where will you go? Away from here. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. Your parents, Sarah called out as I reached the front door. They need to hear this from us. Together, as a family. I laughed again, harsh and bitter. Family. You destroyed that word for me. Tell them whatever you want. I'm sure you'll spin it beautifully. Poor pregnant Sarah seduced by her sister's neglectful husband. They'll probably throw you a party. The last thing I saw before closing the door was them reaching for each other, taking comfort in their shared guilt. 8 months of lies revealed in a single afternoon. My thesis defense morning had become my marriage's funeral by evening. I sat in my car in the parking lot, suitcase in the back, nowhere to go. My phone rang. Patricia from Peterson Enterprises probably calling about the full-time position. I let it go to voicemail. What did career success matter when I'd lost everything else? The rain started again, drumming against the windshield. Somewhere in the apartment above my husband and sister were planning their future. Building their family, in the bed I'd bought, in the home I'd made, with the life I'd built. But they'd made one miscalculation in their perfect plan. They'd assumed I'd crumble, beg, fight for the scraps of their affection. They'd forgotten that the same drive that earned my degree could be turned toward other purposes, that the woman who worked 18-hour days could survive anything. I started the car pulling into traffic with no destination in mind. Just away from the scene of my life's destruction, away from the people who'd shattered my heart while sleeping in my sheets. The champagne I'd bought to celebrate sat unopened in the apartment. Let them drink it. Let them toast their victory while I disappeared to plan mine. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They'd taken everything from me, but they'd also freed me from every obligation, every tie that bound me to them. And a woman with nothing left to lose was a dangerous thing indeed. The rain intensified as I drove toward the unknown, my thesis completion papers. On the passenger seat, my wedding ring still on my finger. By tomorrow, both would represent closed chapters. But tonight, I drove through Seattle's wet streets, a ghost of my former self already plotting resurrection. I spent that first night in a budget motel off Interstate 5, staring at water stains on the ceiling while my phone exploded with messages. 43 texts, 18 missed calls. The digital chorus of people suddenly interested in my well-being now that I'd disrupted their comfortable narrative. By morning, I'd made 2 decisions. First, I needed somewhere to stay that wasn't crawling with bedbugs. Second, I had to face my parents. Better to control the story than let Sarah and James craft their version unopposed. My coworker Jennifer had mentioned her sister was traveling for 3 months, needed someone to house sit. One phone call later, I had a temporary refuge. A small condo in Fremont, fully furnished, blessing me with anonymity and distance from the wreckage of my life. I drove to my parents' house on Saturday morning, finding both cars in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mom washing dishes while Dad read his newspaper. Normal, peaceful, about to be shattered. Mom answered my knock with flour-dusted hands. "Emily, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you." "Can I come in? We need to talk." Her smile faltered at my tone. "Of course. Your father's in the living room." I followed her inside. Memories assault me from every corner. Family photos lined the walls, Sarah and me at Christmas, Easter, birthdays, smiling sisters who shared everything. The irony tasted metallic. Dad looked up from his paper. "Princess, how did the thesis defense go? Sarah mentioned it was yesterday." "I passed with distinction." I sat across from them, hands folded. "But that's not why I'm here." Mom perched on the arm of Dad's chair, concern creasing her features. "What's wrong? You look exhausted." "James and Sarah have been having an affair for 8 months. She's pregnant with his child." The words fell like bombs in the quiet room. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's newspaper crumpled in his grip. For a moment, blessed silence while they processed the unthinkable. Then Mom spoke, and her words changed everything. "Oh, Emily, what did you do? Not how could they? Not are you all right? But what did I do? As if their betrayal was my fault. As if I'd driven them together through some failing of my own." "What did I do?" I repeated slowly. "I went to graduate school, worked hard, trusted my family." Dad set down his mangled newspaper. "You have to admit you haven't been present in your marriage. James mentioned how lonely he's been." "James mentioned? When did James mention this?" They exchanged guilty looks. Mom twisted her wedding ring, a tell from my childhood when she'd been caught in something. "They came by last week," she admitted, "to tell us about the baby, to ask our blessing." The room spun. "They asked your blessing before telling me—" "They were scared," Mom said defensively. "They knew it would hurt you, but Emily, when 2 people fall in love." In my house, while I supported her, "You've always been so focused on yourself." Dad's voice carried disappointment. "Your career, your education. Sarah puts family first. Maybe James realized what he was missing." I stared at these strangers wearing my parents' faces. "She destroyed my marriage, and you're defending her." "She didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken," Mom said gently, as if explaining to a child. "A good wife makes her husband the center of her world. You made him an afterthought." "I was building our future." "You were building your future," Dad corrected. "James just happened to be along for the ride." They'd already chosen, already decided which daughter deserved their loyalty. The one who stayed close, who called daily, who played the role of devoted family member. Not the one who dared to dream beyond their expectations. "So you're taking their side?" Not a question, a statement of fact. "There are no sides." Mom reached for my hand. I pulled away. "We're all family. We need to work through this together." Family doesn't sleep with each other's spouses. Don't be crude, Dad snapped. Sarah made a mistake, but she's pregnant now. That baby is our grandchild, your niece or nephew. Are you really going to punish an innocent child? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself from people who betrayed me. Mom's tears started then. You're being selfish. Think about holidays, birthdays, family gatherings. Are we supposed to choose make Sarah feel unwelcome because she fell in love? Xiaoyi mis 8. She fell in love with my husband. How are they not understanding this? Ex-husband, Dad said quietly. I assume you're divorcing him. Of course I am. Then what's the problem? You don't want him. Sarah does. Everyone gets what they want. What I want is a family who supports me, parents who see how wrong this is, a sister who didn't systematically steal my life. No one stole anything. Mom's voice hardened. You threw it away. All those nights studying instead of cooking dinner, weekends at the library instead of with family. You abandoned your marriage long before Sarah came along. I was getting an education. You were being selfish, and now you want us to abandon Sarah when she needs us most. When she's carrying our grandchild, I won't do it. The finality in her tone left no room for argument. They'd made their choice before I'd even walked through the door. Sarah's pregnancy trumped my pain. Her traditional values outweighed my modern ambitions. In their eyes, I was the architect of my own destruction. There's a family dinner tomorrow, Dad said. Sunday roast. Sarah and James will be there. You're welcome to come if you can behave civilly. Behave civilly at dinner with my husband and sister. Ex-husband, he repeated firmly. And yes, civilly. We're not going to ostracize them because your priorities were skewed. I stood on unsteady legs. This house, these people, this life I'd known for 28 years, all of it shifting, reshaping itself around Sarah's narrative. The successful sister became the cautionary tale. The betrayed wife transformed into the neglectful spouse who got what she deserved. I won't be at dinner, I said, or any dinner where they're welcome. Mom's tears intensified. You're going to make us choose. You already chose. You chose before I got here. Emily, please. She followed me to the door. Don't do this. Don't break up our family over pride. I didn't break anything, but I won't pretend it's whole when it's not. Dad appeared beside her. If you walk out that door, you're saying you matter more than family unity, that your hurt feelings are worth destroying 30 years of love. My hurt feelings, they had an 8-month affair. And you had a 3-year affair with your career, he shot back. Which one destroyed your marriage first? There was no point arguing. They'd rewritten history to make Sarah the heroine of a romance novel instead of the villain of a betrayal. I was the workaholic who'd driven her poor husband into her sister's loving arms, the cautionary tale they'd share at family gatherings I'd never attend. I'm going, I said. When you're ready to see the truth, you know how to reach me. The truth, Mom said bitterly, is that we're about to become grandparents, and you're making us choose between our daughters. That's the only truth that matters. I left them standing in the doorway of the house where I'd grown up, where I'd shared Christmas mornings and birthday parties and countless memories with the sister who'd stolen everything. They watched me drive away, probably already calling Sarah to report on my selfishness, my inability to forgive my insistence on making everything difficult. The text came 2 hours later. From Mom, we love you, but we won't abandon Sarah and our grandchild. When you're ready to be part of this family again, you know where to find us. I deleted it, then I blocked both their numbers. My phone rang immediately after. Extended family having received their marching orders. Aunt Linda wanted me to know I was being unreasonable. Cousin Marcus thought I should consider Sarah's happiness. Uncle Pete reminded me that forgiveness was divine. Block, block, block. By evening, I'd erased 23 contacts. Each deletion felt like cutting cancer from my life. These people who claimed to love me but couldn't see the cruelty in what Sarah had done, who painted me as the villain for having ambitions beyond domestic servitude. I sat in my borrowed condo surrounded by someone else's furniture, holding the tatters of my life. No husband, no home, no family. But I had my degree, my career, my integrity. The last text before I turned off my phone came from Sarah. "Mom told me what happened. I'm sorry you're hurting, but someday you'll see this was for the best. James and I belong together. I hope you find someone who makes you as happy as he makes me." She signed it, "Love always, your sister." I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack, the screen splintering like my family bonds. Love always. As if love meant anything coming from someone who'd methodically dismantled my life while smiling to my face. Tomorrow I'd buy a new phone, new number, new contacts who earned their place through loyalty instead of blood. Tonight I'd mourn the family I'd thought I had, the parents who were supposed to protect me, the sister who should have been my best friend, all of them choosing conditional love over unconditional support. But mourning would end with the sunrise, because every bridge they burned lit my path forward. Every rejection fueled my determination. They wanted me to crumble to beg for inclusion in their twisted family dynamic. Instead, I'd build something better, something stronger, something entirely mine. Let them have their Sunday dinners and shared delusions. Let them toast the happy couple and coo over ultrasound photos. I had work to do, a life to rebuild, success to achieve that would dwarf their small-minded definitions of happiness. The abandoned daughter would become the one who got away, and someday when their perfect family showed its inevitable cracks, they'd remember the one who refused to pretend everything was fine, who chose truth over comfort, who walked away rather than drown in their dysfunction. But by then, I'd be too far gone to look back. January arrived with unusual snow blanketing Seattle in pristine white that made everything look deceptively clean. I'd started my new position at Peterson Enterprises, throwing myself into 12-hour days that kept darker thoughts at bay. The borrowed condo became my refuge, though I still jumped when the doorbell rang, half expecting family members to appear with more lectures about forgiveness. My lawyer Diane Krasnoff came highly recommended for contentious divorces. She sat across from me in her downtown office reviewing the papers James had filed. "He's requesting alimony," she said, sliding documents across her mahogany desk. "Claims you were the primary breadwinner, and he sacrificed career opportunities to support your education." I laughed sharp and bitter. "He makes $70,000 a year. I was barely making $50 while in school." "Yes, but now you're at Peterson making $90. He's arguing future earning potential." She adjusted her glasses. "There's also the matter of the house." "What about it? I made the down payment from my savings, my inheritance from Grandma." "Can you prove that bank records documentation?" "Of course." I pulled out the folder I'd assembled. $20,000 from my grandmother's estate. Here's the will, the transfer documents, everything. Diane reviewed the papers carefully. "This helps. Washington is a community property state, but inherited assets remain separate, if not commingled. Did you put his name on the deed?" My heart sank. "Yes. He said it would be our home together. That marriage meant sharing everything." "Then he has a claim, 50% at minimum." She made notes on her legal pad. "What about bank accounts?" "Joint accounts." He insisted it showed trust. Every decision made in love now weaponized against me. But I've noticed strange withdrawals over the past few months, large amounts I didn't authorize. "How large?" $15,000 total, maybe more. Cash withdrawals, transfers to accounts I don't recognize. Diane's expression darkened. "Pull all your bank statements. If he's been draining marital assets, we can fight back. But Emily, you need to prepare yourself. These cases get ugly, especially with the pregnancy involved." The word still felt like a punch. "She's not part of the divorce proceedings, is she?" "Not directly, but judges are human. A pregnant woman tends to evoke sympathy, especially if they paint you as the career-obsessed wife who neglected her family." That narrative again. The story everyone seemed eager to believe. I left Diane's office with a thicker folder and a thinner bank account, her retainer depleting my savings further. The next blow came at month's end. An invitation arrived at my office, expensive cardstock with elegant calligraphy. Sarah and James requested my presence at their wedding, February 14th, Valentine's Day. The audacity stole my breath. A sticky note in Sarah's handwriting. I know this is hard, but you're still my sister. Please come. It would mean everything. I fed it into the office shredder, watching their names disappear into ribbons. Patricia knocked on my door. Bad news. My sister's marrying my soon-to-be ex-husband on Valentine's Day. Her eyes widened. The sister who... Yes, that one. She sat across from me, professional mask slipping. My God, Emily, how are you even functioning? Work helps. Staying busy keeps me from thinking too much. Have you considered talking to someone? The company has excellent counseling services. I had considered it. But what would I say? My family chose my pregnant sister over me. Everyone thinks I deserved betrayal for daring to have ambitions. The therapist would probably suggest I examine my own role in the situation, find ways I'd contributed to my own abandonment. I'll think about it, I lied. The universe wasn't done with its cruelty. Grandma Charlotte died in early February, 2 days before the wedding I wouldn't attend. She'd been declining for months, but the timing felt intentional, as if even death conspired to reunite me with my family. I sat in the back row at the funeral, watching my parents comfort a visibly pregnant Sarah. James stood beside her, his hand protective on her growing bump. The happy couple mourning together while I hid like a criminal at my own grandmother's service. During the eulogy, Uncle Pete mentioned Grandma's joy about her coming great-grandchild, how she'd knitted blankets and bought savings bonds, how family continuity had comforted her final days. No mention of the granddaughter who'd earned a doctorate, the one Grandma had always encouraged to reach higher. I slipped out during the final prayer, but Mom caught me at my car. Running away again. Her black dress made her look older, harder. Paying my respects and leaving, as requested. No one requested you leave. You're choosing isolation. I'm choosing peace. She glanced back at the church where mourners gathered. Your grandmother left you something. In her will. Keep it. Give it to Sarah's baby. It's not money. Mom pulled an envelope from her purse. She wrote letters to all the grandchildren. This is yours. I took it reluctantly. Grandma's shaky handwriting spelled my name. The reading is next week, Mom continued. You should come. Whatever's between you and Sarah, Grandma loved you both. Does the will reading include sitting next to my pregnant sister and her husband who used to be mine? Mom's face hardened. Yes, Emily. It includes being in the same room as your family for 1 hour. Think you can manage that? I got in my car without answering. In the rearview mirror, I watched her walk back to the church, to the family that functioned perfectly well without me. Better, probably. No difficult daughter asking uncomfortable questions about loyalty and betrayal. The letter from Grandma remained unopened on my dashboard for 3 days. When I finally read it alone in my borrowed condo with a glass of wine, her words broke through my carefully constructed walls. My dearest Emily, it began. Of all my grandchildren, you remind me most of myself. Ambitious, determined, unwilling to settle for less than you deserve. These qualities will bring you both greatness and loneliness. People will call you difficult for wanting more. They'll blame you for disruptions to their comfort. Don't let them dim your light. The price of excellence is often isolation, but the reward is becoming who you're meant to be. Live boldly, my dear one, even if you must live alone. I cried then ugly sobs that had been building for weeks. Grandma had seen me, had understood. In her final message, she'd given me permission to choose myself over family harmony. The will reading took place in a sterile conference room downtown. I arrived exactly on time, finding seats already arranged in their traditional configuration. Parents together, Sarah and James as a unit, me alone at the end like a punctuation mark. Sarah's pregnancy showed prominently now 5 months of visible evidence of her betrayal. She wore a flowing dress that emphasized her condition, hands constantly caressing her bump. James fussed over her comfort-adjusting chairs, fetching water. The devoted father-to-be. The lawyer read through standard bequests. Household items to mom, tools to dad, money divided among grandchildren. Then he paused. There's an unusual provision here. Charlotte left her house to Emily exclusively with the stipulation that it cannot be sold for 5 years. She must live in it or rent it out, but ownership remains solely hers. The room erupted. Sarah's tears, Mom's protests, Dad's anger about fairness and family homes. The lawyer continued reading over their noise. Charlotte's letter explains her reasoning. Quote, I leave my home to Emily because she's the only one who won't sell it for quick profit. She understands that some things matter more than money, that building something lasting requires sacrifice. The others have each other. Emily has herself and this house. May she find peace within its walls. This is wrong, Sarah sobbed. I'm having her great-grandchild. That house should be the baby's inheritance. You have a husband and his house, I said quietly, or rather my former house. James had the grace to look uncomfortable. Emily's right. We don't need it. But it's not fair. Sarah's voice pitched higher. She gets everything. The education, the career now, Grandma's house. And you got my husband and my parents' support. Seems like we're even. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's more. Charlotte set aside trust funds for future great-grandchildren accessible at age 25. She's also left her jewelry collection to be divided among granddaughters. Sarah receives the pearl set. Emily gets the diamonds. More tears, more accusations of favoritism, as if Grandma's final gifts could somehow balance 8 months of deception. I signed the necessary papers while my family huddled together, comforting Sarah through her devastation at receiving slightly less than everything. Outside the office building, James caught up with me at the elevator. Emily, wait. I jabbed the button harder. No. The house thing, in the divorce. My lawyer says I have a strong claim, but I want you to know I won't pursue it aggressively. You deserve to keep it. How magnanimous, stealing my sister but leaving me my house. I didn't steal anything. His familiar anger flared. You threw me away, treated our marriage like an inconvenience between study sessions. And that justified an 8-month affair. The elevator arrived. I stepped inside, but he blocked the doors. I loved you, he said quietly, but you loved your future more than our present. Sarah sees me, values me, makes me feel like I matter. Then be happy with her, but don't pretend you're the victim here. I pushed past him into the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw him standing there, wedding ring, gone hand, rubbing the pale indent where it used to rest. The last image of my husband, ex-husband, Sarah's husband now. The drive to Grandma's house felt like traveling through time. The old Victorian sat on Queen Anne Hill painted the same soft yellow I remembered from childhood. Inside, everything remained exactly as she'd left it. Doilies on tables, pictures on walls, a life interrupted but somehow still present. I walked through rooms filled with memories, Sarah and I baking cookies in the kitchen, playing dress-up with Grandma's old clothes, building blanket forts in the living room, before ambition divided us, before she wanted what was mine, before I became the villain of my own story for wanting more than they thought I deserved. In Grandma's study, I found photo albums, our family through decades, my parents' wedding, Sarah and I as babies, toddlers, teenagers, my college graduation, my wedding, all of us smiling unaware of how it would end. I closed the album and looked around the empty house, my inheritance. A place to live alone while my sister played house with my husband, while my parents welcomed their grandchild, while everyone moved forward without me. But Grandma had been right. Some things mattered more than money or family approval. Building something lasting required sacrifice, and maybe losing everything was just the first step toward finding what I actually needed. The house felt less empty suddenly, less like a consolation prize and more like a foundation. I had a career that challenged me, a house that sheltered me, a future that belonged solely to me. Let them have their Valentine's wedding and their miracle baby and their rewritten history. I had Grandma Charlotte's blessing and belief that excellence was worth its price. It would have to be enough, for now. The divorce finalized on a gray March morning that matched my mood perfectly. Diane had fought valiantly, but Washington's community property laws showed no mercy. James walked away with the house we'd bought together, claiming it as the marital home where he'd continue residing. The judge, a woman in her 60s who wore a wedding ring like a badge of honor, had looked at me with barely concealed disapproval as Diane argued my case. "Your client was the primary breadwinner by choice," she'd said, as if ambition were a crime. "She pursued advanced education while her husband maintained their home. The property division stands." I signed papers that gave James the house I'd downpaid half our savings, despite his secret withdrawals and even some of my retirement funds. The only victories, no alimony, and keeping Grandma's house. Small comfort when everything else disappeared into the sinkhole of Sarah and James's new life. Standing outside the courthouse, I watched happy couples exit the building with marriage licenses, while I clutched dissolution papers. Diane touched my shoulder gently. "I'm sorry we couldn't do better. The pregnancy complicated things. Judges see a family forming and want to protect it. Even when it's built on lies, especially then. They see a woman trying to make things work, not the betrayal that started it." She handed me her final invoice. "Take care of yourself, Emily. Living well is the best revenge." But living well felt impossible when I returned to the empty house to pack my remaining belongings. James had given me 3 hours while he and Sarah went to a prenatal appointment. How considerate, letting me retrieve my possessions while they listened to their baby's heartbeat. The house smelled different. Sarah's perfume had replaced my candles. Her decorating touches covered our former home like conquest flags. Wedding photos had vanished, replaced by ultrasound images held by magnets on the refrigerator. In what used to be my office, a nursery had taken shape. Soft yellow walls, a crib where my desk had stood, stuffed animals piled where I'd earned my degree. I packed mechanically. Clothes, books, the few pieces of jewelry James hadn't claimed as gifts he'd given me. In the bedroom closet, I found a box shoved in the back corner, my wedding dress pristine in its preservation box. I left it there. Let Sarah find it. Let her wonder if James thought of me when he saw her wearing white. The photo albums proved harder. Our history together documented in snapshots. I took only pictures from before James, my childhood, college years, early career. Everything after him stayed behind. Those memories belonged to someone else now, a naive woman who'd believed love meant sharing everything. My phone buzzed. Sarah texting, "Hi, Em. Appointment running long. Take all the time you need. There's lemonade in the fridge if you're thirsty." The casual cruelty of her kindness, offering me beverages in my own kitchen. I didn't respond. What was there to say? "Thanks for the lemonade. Enjoy my life." I loaded my car with the remnants of 3 years each trip to the vehicle, feeling like retreat. Neighbors watched from windows, probably gossiping about the career woman who'd lost her man to someone who understood priorities. Let them talk. They'd chosen their narrative long ago. The last item I grabbed was my grandmother's china, a wedding gift Sarah had always admired. Petty maybe, but I'd earned some pettiness. As I wrapped the final teacup, I heard cars in the driveway. They'd returned early. Sarah entered first-hand protective over her 6-month bump. She wore one of those flowing maternity dresses that made pregnancy look like a fashion statement. James followed, carrying shopping bags from baby stores. They stopped short, seeing me in what was now their kitchen. "Oh," Sarah's hand flew to her chest. "I didn't think you'd still be here." "Just leaving." I sealed the box of china. Her eyes tracked the box. "You're taking Grandma's china." She gave it to me. "But," Sarah's voice trembled, "I thought you'd leave it for family dinners, for the baby to use someday." "The baby has stolen enough from me. The china stays mine." Stolen. James stepped forward, protective. Our child hasn't stolen anything. No, check the nursery that used to be my office, the life you're living in my house. The family gathered around Sarah instead of divided equally. Your baby has everything that was mine. You're being cruel. Sarah's tears started on cue, blaming an innocent baby for adult choices. Adult choices. Is that what we're calling your affair now? We've apologized 100 times. James's patience snapped. How long will you punish us? We fell in love. People fall in love. It happens in my bed, in my home, while I was building a future for us. For you, he slammed his hand on the counter. Always for you, your degree, your career, your success. When was it ever about us? When I married you? When I trusted you? When I believed promises meant something? Sarah moved between us, peacekeeper in the war she'd started. Please don't fight. Stress isn't good for the baby. Everything circled back to the baby. The ultimate trump card. Sarah rubbed her belly whenever arguments arose, redirecting attention to the life growing inside her. The life that made their betrayal somehow noble instead of nauseating. I carried the china to my car without another word. They watched from the doorway the happy couple in their stolen kingdom. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted up to him, a portrait of domestic bliss painted over the canvas of my former life. Grandma's house felt like a mausoleum when I arrived, boxes stacked in the foyer, evidence of my displacement. I'd managed to fit my entire existence into 6 cardboard containers and 1 carload of memories. Everything else stayed behind, absorbed into Sarah and James's new reality. That night, I sat on Grandma's porch with a bottle of wine, watching the city lights twinkle below. My phone had been mercifully quiet. Even Sarah seemed to sense I'd reached my limit. Or maybe she was too busy nested in my former home to care about my whereabouts. The wine made me maudlin. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, torturing myself with evidence of happier times. Sarah as my maid of honor, James on our honeymoon, family barbecues where everyone smiled genuinely. Had the signs been there all along? Secret glances I'd missed. Touches that lingered too long while I buried myself in textbooks. A text interrupted my self-pity spiral. From Mom, Easter is next month. You're welcome to join us. Sarah and James will be there, but we can all be civil. Think about it. I deleted it without responding. Civil. As if politeness could patch the crater they'd blown in my life. As if sitting across from my pregnant sister while she carved ham in my former dining room counted as healing. The wine bottle emptied as Seattle's skyline blurred through tears I'd held back for weeks. This was rock bottom. Divorced, disowned, displaced, living in a dead woman's house while everyone else moved forward without me. My success had cost me everything society said mattered: family, marriage, belonging. But in the darkness, wine-sick and alone, something shifted. Rock bottom meant no further to fall. Only up remained. And climbing required letting go of what dragged me down. The family who'd chosen sides, the husband who'd chosen my sister, the life that had never really been mine. I stood unsteadily, wine bottle clanging as I dropped it in recycling. Tomorrow I'd unpack, make Grandma's house mine, build something new on the ashes of what burned. But tonight I grieved. For the marriage that died, the family that fractured, the sister I'd lost long before she took everything else. Seattle slept below, unaware of my small tragedy. Somewhere across the city, Sarah slept in my bed, next to my husband growing my replacement in her belly. My parents slept peacefully, conscience clear in their choice, everyone resting easy, except the difficult daughter who dared want more. But difficult daughters did more than want. They worked, they built, they rose from ashes others assumed would bury them. And tomorrow, when the wine wore off and the sun rose, I'd begin. Not revenge, something better. Success so complete their betrayal would become a footnote in my larger story. For now, I stumbled to Grandma's bed, still wearing clothes that smelled like my former house. Tomorrow I'd wash everything, cleanse every trace of them from my life. Tonight I'd sleep in sheets that belonged to someone who'd believed in me, who'd known excellence was worth its price, even when that price was everything else. Seattle had never seen a summer like the one after my divorce. Heat waves shattered records while I shattered my own limitations, pouring 18-hour days into Peterson Enterprises with the fury of someone with nothing left to lose. Patricia watched my transformation with a mixture of admiration and concern, occasionally suggesting I take breaks I never wanted. "You're on fire," she said one August evening, finding me still at my desk at 10 o'clock. The Morrison campaign. The Westfield rebrand, the boards taking notice. I looked up from analytics reports, stretching muscles that had forgotten any position but hunched over keyboards. Good. That's the point. Is it? She perched on my desk's edge, studying me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "When's the last time you went home before 9, something that wasn't from the vending machine?" Tuesday. A lie. I couldn't remember. Emily's success isn't worth destroying yourself. But she was wrong. Success was the only thing that made sense anymore. Every campaign I crushed, every client I won, every metric I exceeded, built walls between who I was and who I'd been. The abandoned wife, the difficult daughter, the woman who'd lost everything. Each achievement added another brick to the fortress of my new identity. I moved through days with mechanical precision. 5 a.m. gym sessions to exhaust my body, 6 a.m. arrival at an empty office, coffee replacing breakfast salad, replacing lunch protein bars, replacing dinner, weekends blurred into weekdays. The only calendar dates that mattered were campaign launches and client presentations. My desk became a shrine to productivity. No personal photos, no sentimental trinkets, just monitors, reports, and the occasional award Patricia insisted on displaying. The Employee of the Month plaque for June, the Innovation Award for July, tangible proof I was more than the sum of my losses. "You know," Patricia said during one of her check-ins, "there's a startup looking for a CMO. Martinez mentioned your name." I didn't look up from the deck I was building. Not interested. "It's a tech company revolutionizing small business marketing. Exactly your wheelhouse. And the equity package." "Patricia, I'm fine here." "Are you?" She waited until I met her eyes. "Because you're performing like someone running from something, not toward something." That night I Googled the startup, Velocity Marketing Solutions. Their platform automated what took small businesses hours to accomplish. Smart, scalable. Exactly the kind of innovation I'd have jumped at before. Before became the dividing line in my personal history. Before the affair. Before the divorce. Before I learned that ambition was both shield and sword. September brought the first anniversary of Sarah moving in. I knew because she sent a text, "Thinking of you today. Remember when I first came to stay, I never meant for things to happen this way. Baby's due next month. We named him Thomas James. I hope someday you can meet your nephew." Thomas James. They'd given their theft a name. I deleted the message and threw myself into the Hartfield account, a multi-million-dollar campaign that required complete focus. No time for sentiment when there were markets to conquer. My body rebelled eventually. October arrived with a cold that knocked me flat, forcing me home for the first time in months. I lay in Grandma's bed, fever cooking my brain, dreaming of Sarah's baby shower, pink and blue decorations in my former living room, my mother serving cake to guests who'd once been my friends, everyone cooing over gifts for a baby conceived in betrayal. When the fever broke, I found 17 missed calls, not from family. I'd blocked those numbers, from Patricia, from clients, from team members. The world hadn't stopped for my illness. Good. I dragged myself back to the office, ignoring Patricia's orders to rest. Rest was for people with lives outside work. I had campaigns to run. "You're going to burn out," she warned, watching me suppress coughs during a client call. "I'm fine." "You're not, and I'm not losing my best strategist to stubbornness." She slid a business card across my desk. "Elijah Chen, therapist, specializes in high-achieving professionals, Make an appointment. I don't need therapy. It's not a request. I pocketed the card to appease her no intention of calling. Therapy meant examining wounds I'd rather let scar over. But Patricia monitored me like a hawk, and eventually I caved. Dr. Chen's office occupied a corner of a downtown high-rise, all clean lines and calming colors. He looked younger than expected, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Tell me what brings you here." He said, notepad ready, but not intrusive. "My boss thinks I work too much." "Do you agree?" "I think work is the only thing that makes sense right now." He nodded, making notes. When did right now begin? And somehow I told him. The whole sordid story. Sarah's arrival. The slow revelation of betrayal. The divorce that took everything. The family that chose her. The work that saved me from drowning in it all. "Interesting," he said when I finished. "You frame work as salvation. Have you considered it might be another form of hiding?" "I'm not hiding, I'm building." "What are you building?" "A career, success, proof that I matter." Proof to whom? The question hung between us. To James, Sarah, my parents, or to myself, the woman who'd somehow failed at the life everyone expected her to live? "I don't know," I admitted. "That's a good place to start," he said gently. Not knowing. Being curious about what comes next. I left his office feeling raw, exposed, but I made another appointment, and another. Slowly, over weeks that turned to months, Dr. Chen helped me excavate the person beneath the productivity. The woman who'd existed before betrayal rewired her DNA into pure ambition. November brought news through the professional grapevine. Sarah had delivered. Healthy baby boy. James posting proud father photos on LinkedIn of all places. I studied one during a vulnerable moment. My sister in a hospital bed, exhausted but glowing. James beside her holding their son. The family they'd built on the ruins of mine. "How does that make you feel?" Dr. Chen asked when I mentioned it. "Like I should feel more than I do," I admitted. "There's sadness, anger, but mostly distance, like I'm viewing someone else's life through frosted glass. Distance can be healthy. It means you're no longer defined by their choices." He was right. Their joy didn't diminish me anymore. Their family didn't negate my existence. Somewhere between 60-hour work weeks and Thursday therapy sessions, I'd begun building an identity that existed independent of their betrayal. Peterson's holiday party arrived with December snow. I'd avoided office social events, preferring spreadsheets to small talk. But Patricia insisted, threatening to drag me bodily if necessary. I wore a black dress that had hung untouched since the divorce surprised to find it loose. Stress and skipped meals had carved away pounds I hadn't noticed losing. The party buzzed with festive energy. Colleagues I'd barely spoken to beyond project needs welcomed me warmly. They knew my story. Office gossip traveled fast, but no one mentioned it. Instead, they talked about my campaigns, my strategies, my reputation as the workhorse who transformed struggling accounts into success stories. "You're something of a legend," Marcus from accounting said, handing me champagne. "The woman who never sleeps." "I sleep." I protested, accepting the glass but not drinking. Alcohol reminded me of wine-soaked nights on Grandma's porch, drowning in self-pity. "Sure you do," he smiled. "Between campaigns." Patricia appeared at my elbow. "There's someone I want you to meet, David Kim, our new head of digital strategy. David, this is Emily Chen, the one I've been telling you about." David stood tall and lean with an easy smile and intelligent eyes. We shook hands, his grip firm but not aggressive. He asked about my work, listening with genuine interest as I explained our latest campaign. No wedding ring. No mention of family obligations. Just professional curiosity that slowly revealed a sharp mind and dry humor. "I'd love to pick your brain about the Morrison strategy," he said as the party wound down. "Maybe over coffee, when you actually take breaks, of course." I almost said no, default response to anything that wasn't work. But Patricia's raised eyebrow and Dr. Chen's voice about hiding made me reconsider. Sure, Tuesday morning. His smile widened. It's a date. Professional date. Coffee date. Not a date. He winced. I'm going to stop talking now. I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. When had I last laughed, David retreated with flaming cheeks and Patricia nudged me. See, life exists outside these walls. Maybe it did. Maybe I'd hidden long enough in spreadsheets and strategies. Maybe rebuilding meant more than just career achievements. As I drove home through snowy streets, I thought about possibilities beyond the next campaign. Coffee with David. Conversations about more than conversion rates. A life that included but wasn't consumed by work. Grandma's house welcomed me with familiar warmth. I'd finally unpacked adding touches that made it mine. My diplomas on the wall where her paintings had hung, my books filling shelves that had held her collections, not erasing her presence, but blending it with mine. In the kitchen, I made actual dinner for the first time in weeks. Nothing elaborate, just pasta and salad, but eaten at the table instead of my desk. Small revolution. Tiny rebellion against the woman who'd tried to work herself into oblivion rather than feel the weight of loss. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number that I almost deleted. Then I read it. Hi, Emily. This is David from the party. Patricia gave me your number after significant begging. Just wanted to say it was nice meeting you. Looking forward to Tuesday. Also, I promised to be less awkward about the not date thing. I smiled, typing back, awkwardness noted and appreciated. See you Tuesday. It wasn't forgiveness for those who'd wronged me. Wasn't reconciliation with the family who'd chosen sides. But it was something. A crack in the fortress I'd built. A suggestion that maybe possibly life after betrayal could include more than work and survival. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No dreams of stolen houses or pregnant sisters, just rest, deep and earned and pointing toward tomorrow, where coffee was just coffee until it became something more, where work mattered but didn't define, where a woman could rebuild without forgetting, move forward without looking back. The difficult daughter was learning to be more than her difficulties, and that more than any campaign success or award felt like victory. The coffee meeting with David became lunch, which became a standing Tuesday tradition. What started as professional conversations evolved into something harder to categorize. He had a way of making me laugh between discussions of user engagement metrics, slipping observations that revealed a mind as strategic as it was kind. You know what I like about you? He said one January afternoon, stealing fries from my plate with casual intimacy we'd developed. You don't pretend things are fine when they're not. Most people hate that about me. Most people are afraid of truth. He signaled for more coffee. I've been reading about your campaigns. The Morrison turnaround, brilliant. But I think you're capable of more than saving other people's visions. Meaning maybe it's time to build your own. I'd been thinking the same thing. Late nights when sleep eluded me, I'd sketch business plans on Grandma's kitchen table, a platform democratizing marketing for small businesses, the entrepreneurs grinding 18-hour days like I did, but without corporate resources. They deserved better than template solutions and predatory agencies. I might have some ideas, I admitted. David leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. Tell me everything. So I did. The vision I'd been nurturing in secret, analytics-driven but intuitive, sophisticated technology wrapped in simplicity, marketing power for the powerless. David listened, asked sharp questions, challenged assumptions. By the time we'd finished 3 rounds of coffee, my napkin was covered in diagrams, and he was grinning. This is it, he said. This is your empire. Empires require capital. Then let's find some. The shift from your to let's should have scared me. After James' trust felt like speaking a dead language, but David moved differently. He supported without subsuming, encouraged without controlling. When I worked late, he'd text reminders to eat. When I succeeded, he celebrated without making it about him. Friendship with potential for more, but no pressure to define it. February arrived with unexpected rain and more unexpected news. Patricia called me into her office, expression unreadable. "There's a venture capital group interested in funding marketing technology," she began. "They've heard about you." "Through Peterson." "Through the industry. Your reputation extends beyond these walls." She slid a card across her desk. "Sarah Winters at Cascade Ventures. She wants to meet." My body tensed at the name Sarah, though this one owed me nothing. Patricia noticed. "Different Sarah," she said gently. "This one might change your life for the better." The meeting was scheduled for the following week. I prepared like my life depended on it because maybe it did. David helped refine my pitch, spending his own evenings poring over market research and financial projections. Dr. Chen worked with me on presence and confidence, moving past the defensive walls I'd built. "You're not asking for permission to exist," he reminded me. "You're offering them opportunity to invest in brilliance." Cascade Ventures occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel, and barely contained energy. Sarah Winters looked like success, personified. Silver hair worn short and chic suit that cost more than my car eyes that missed nothing. Her handshake could crack walnuts. "Emily Chen," she said, gesturing to a conference room with million-dollar views. "I've been following your work. Tell me why you're wasting talent making other people rich." No small talk, no warming up, straight to the heart like a surgeon. I liked her immediately. For 2 hours, I laid out my vision. The platform, the market need, the technology stack, the revenue model. She interrupted, constantly pushing on weak points, testing assumptions. Her associates took notes while she watched me like a raptor evaluating prey. How much, she asked when I finished. $2 million seed funding. I maintain 51% ownership. 70-30 their favor. 55 mine, non-negotiable. She smiled for the first time. "You know your worth. Good. Too many founders give away their companies before they begin." She stood, extending her hand again. "We'll be in touch." David waited in the lobby, professional enough not to hover, but caring enough to be there. One look at my face and he knew. "Champagne," he suggested. "Coffee," I countered. "It's 2 in the afternoon." "Compromise Irish coffee." We found a bar that served coffee with whiskey at inappropriate hours. I recounted every moment while he listened, proud but not surprised. When I finished, he raised his mug. "To Emily Chen, future CEO of her own empire." "Nothing's decided yet." "It is, you just don't know it yet." He was right. Sarah Winters called the next morning. Cascade would fund at my terms with her sitting on the board. Legal papers would take weeks, but the verbal agreement was binding. I sat in my Peterson office phone, still warm in my hand, processing the reality. My company, my vision, my chance to build something that couldn't be stolen. Patricia knew before I said anything. "When do you leave us?" 30 days notice, longer if you need." "We'll manage." She came around her desk to hug me, rare display of emotion. "I'm proud of you. Scared to lose you, but proud as hell." Word spread through Peterson like wildfire. Colleagues who'd watched my zombie months of pure work suddenly understood. I hadn't been hiding. I'd been preparing. Every 18-hour day had led to this moment. The hardest conversation came later with Dr. Chen. We'd made progress excavating the person beneath the productivity. Now I was diving back into work deeper than ever. "Different work," I explained. "This isn't escape, it's creation." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm not running from anything. I'm running towards something." I met his steady gaze. "They took everything that mattered. House, husband, family, but they couldn't take my mind, my drive, my ability to build. This company. It's proof that losing everything wasn't the end." "And if you succeed, what then?" Good question. Success for success's sake was hollow victory, but success that helped others, that built something lasting, that proved betrayal, was a beginning rather than ending. That meant something. "Then I'll know I was never the victim they painted me as," I said finally. "I was always the hero of my own story. Just took me a while to realize it. March blurred by in a haze of legal documents, resignation letters, and strategic planning. I incorporated as Velocity Marketing Solutions. The name David had helped brainstorm, feeling right on my tongue. My team began forming, David taking a leap to join as CTO, 2 developers who believed in the vision. A designer who understood simplicity was the ultimate sophistication. We worked out of Grandma's house, initially laptops covering her dining table, whiteboards, leaning against walls that had held her paintings. She would have loved the chaos, the ambition, the refusal to accept limitations. Her blessing lived in every strategic decision, every small victory. My family remained silent, locked away behind block numbers and boundaries. Occasionally, whispers reached me through professional networks. Sarah had quit working to raise the baby. James struggled with the financial burden of single income. My parents helped where they could, but retirement limited resources. The life they'd built on my ruins showed cracks I refused to feel satisfaction about. Their struggles weren't my success. My success was my success. April brought our first client. May added 10 more. June saw revenue that made investors smile. David and I worked side-by-side, friendship deepening into something unnamed but undeniable. He never pushed. Understanding my walls had been earned through pain. But sometimes during late-night coding sessions, our hands would brush reaching for coffee, and neither would pull away. "You know I'm falling for you," he said one evening, matter-of-fact, between debugging sessions. "I know. You don't have to feel the same, or act on it. Just wanted it said." "I know that too." He smiled, returning to his code, patient, present. Everything James had never been. The comparison was unfair but unavoidable. Where James had demanded centrality, David celebrated independence. Where James had resented ambition, David amplified it. Different species of men, proving I hadn't been wrong to want partnership, just wrong about who could provide it. July arrived with Seattle's perfect weather and Velocity's perfect metrics. 15 employees, 50 clients, revenue projections that made Sarah Winters call with congratulations. My empire built on ashes reaching toward sky. The local business journal wanted an interview. Young CEO transforms heartbreak into startup success. I declined. My story wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about building, creating, proving that the difficult daughter had been right all along. Success was worth its price. Excellence demanded sacrifice. And sometimes losing everything was just clearing space for something better. I stood in Grandma's garden one evening, David beside me discussing expansion plans, my team visible through windows turning her house into headquarters. This wasn't the life I'd planned, the husband and kids, and Sunday dinners with extended family, but it was the life I'd built from scorched earth, and it was entirely mine. "No regrets?" David asked, following my gaze to the house full of future. "None that matter." "And the family stuff?" "What family?" The words came without bitterness, fact not feeling. I have you, the team, the company, the clients we're helping build their dreams. That's my family now. He took my hand, first time we'd crossed that boundary. I didn't pull away, couldn't pretend anymore that professional was all this was, that rebuilding hadn't included my heart alongside my career. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think you traded up." Looking at him, at the house, at the life I'd built, despite everything I knew, he was right. The family who'd chosen conditional love had freed me to find unconditional purpose. The husband who'd preferred comfort had cleared space for someone who matched my climb. The sister who'd stolen my life had given me permission to build a better one. "Yeah," I said, squeezing his hand. "I think I did too." Inside, my team worked late because they believed in what we were building. Not because they had nowhere else to go, but because they wanted to be part of something meaningful. The difference mattered. The choice mattered. Everything I'd lost had taught me what was worth keeping. And this empire of ambition and innovation, and people who saw my drive as gift rather than threat, this was worth everything it cost. 2 years had transformed Seattle's skyline and my life in equal measure. Velocity Marketing Solutions occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse in Georgetown, our logo gleaming against exposed brick that spoke to both our roots and ambitions. 60 employees called it home. 300 clients trusted us with their growth. The business journals had shifted from calling me promising to disruptive to simply powerful. I stood in our conference room one October morning watching fog curl around the sound, while David presented quarterly projections to our board. His confidence had grown alongside the company, transforming from talented developer to visionary CTO. Sarah Winters nodded approval at revenue charts that exceeded her wildest expectations. We'd paid back initial investments and were plotting Series B funding for national expansion. New York wants us, David concluded. Los Angeles is begging. Chicago offered tax incentives that would make your head spin. But we're staying in Seattle, I added, meeting Sarah's eyes. This city made us. We grow here. After the meeting, I returned to my office, pausing at the wall of press clippings my assistant insisted on maintaining. Seattle's fastest-growing startup. Emily Chen redefining small business marketing, the platform democratizing digital success. Each headline represented 16-hour days and strategic gambles that paid off, but the one that mattered most was smaller, tucked in the corner. Local CEO donates 1 million to Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. Success meant nothing if it only elevated me. Every dollar we earned created opportunities for others who'd been told their ambitions were too big, too bold, too much. My phone buzzed. Patricia, now CMO of a Fortune 500 company, texting congratulations on our latest product launch. She'd become more than a former boss, a mentor, friend, an occasional reality check when my drive threatened to consume everything in its path. A knock interrupted my thoughts. David entered with coffee and the expression that meant personal, not professional. Your mother called the main line again, he said gently. 3rd time this month. I accepted the coffee buying time with a long sip. 2.5 years of silence, and now they were circling back. The calls had started 6 months ago. First my father leaving voicemails about family being forever. Then my mother, her messages evolving from demanding to pleading. I deleted them all, but David had started fielding the office calls, personally protective instincts in overdrive. What did she want this time? To congratulate you on the magazine feature, to say they're proud, to ask if you'd consider meeting. He paused. She sounded desperate, Emily. Desperate happens when consequences finally arrive. I'm not defending them, just reporting. I moved to the windows, watching the city pulse with life below. Success had given me armor against many things, but family remained the weak spot. Not because I missed them, but because their rejection had fueled so much of my rise. What happened to motivation when the source disappeared? There's something else, David continued. The property management company called. Your childhood home is being foreclosed. Your parents haven't paid rent in 6 months. The news should have brought satisfaction. Poetic justice for those who'd chosen wrong. Instead, I felt hollow. Their suffering didn't heal my scars or validate my success. It just meant more broken pieces of a family that had shattered long ago. Not my problem, I said finally. No, it's not. He set down papers I recognized as contracts. But this might be. They're listing the house for sale. Market value is around $400,000. Pocket change for us now. You think I should buy it? The idea felt absurd. Full circle to a past I'd abandoned. I think you should decide if you want someone else living in your memories. Either way, you win. Let it go and close that chapter. Buy it and, I don't know, burn sage, exorcise ghosts, rent it to a nice family who won't destroy each other. His phone rang before I could respond. Our head of operations with a client emergency. David squeezed my shoulder and left to handle it, giving me space to process. I stared at the contracts, seeing beyond legal language, to holiday dinners and birthday parties and a sister I'd trusted with everything. Sarah Winters called that afternoon. Not about family drama, but opportunities that made my personal concerns feel trivial. "I have someone you should meet," she said without preamble. "Marshall Chen. No relation despite the name. He runs West Coast operations for Kleiner Perkins. They're interested in what you're building. We don't need more funding yet." This isn't about money, it's about connections, scaling, taking velocity from successful to legendary. She paused. "Also, he specifically asked to meet you. Apparently your story resonates." My story. The one I'd never told publicly. Somehow whispers of the woman who'd lost everything and built an empire had reached venture capital royalty. I agreed to the meeting, adding it to a calendar that barely had room to breathe. That evening, I drove through my old neighborhood rather than home. October had painted the trees in shades of lost maple leaves falling like tears. The streets held muscle memory, turning automatically toward the house that had sheltered my childhood. It looked smaller than memory, suggested paint peeling yard overgrown. A foreclosure notice dominated the front door. I parked across the street, engine running, watching shadows move behind familiar windows. Were they packing, fighting, comforting each other through consequences of choices that had seemed so right? Part of me wanted to knock to see what remained of the family who'd cast me out. The wiser part kept my hands on the wheel. My phone lit up with texts from David. Client crisis resolved. Dinner plans confirmed. Normal life waiting beyond this street of ghosts. I drove away without looking back, but the image lingered. My childhood home dying from neglect, while those who'd chosen it over me faced their own abandonment. Back at Grandma's house, now my house in every way that mattered, David had dinner waiting. Nothing elaborate, just Thai food and wine, and his presence that had become essential as breathing. We ate while reviewing expansion proposals, conversation flowing between business and personal with the ease of deep partnership. I drove by the house, I admitted over pad Thai, and "It's dying like everything they chose over me." That's poetic and probably therapeutic to witness. He refilled my wine. "What do you want to do about it?" "Why do I have to do anything?" "Because you're Emily Chen. You don't leave loose ends. It's what makes you a brilliant CEO and occasionally insufferable girlfriend." Girlfriend. We'd been using the word for 6 months, each time still feeling like victory over trust issues. David understood my damage, having his own from a marriage that ended when success threatened his ex-wife's worldview. We fit together, two refugees from conventional expectations, building something better. "Marshall Chen wants to meet next week." I changed the subject. "Sarah thinks he could transform our trajectory." "Sarah's usually right, but what do you think?" "I think we're doing fine without Silicon Valley's blessing." "Fine isn't your style. You want empire, not adequacy." He was right. Fine was survival. I wanted domination. Every small business in America using our platform. Every entrepreneur having access to tools that only corporations could afford before. Market revolution disguised as software solutions. "I'll take the meeting," I decided, "but not at their offices. Here, our territory." "Power move, I like it." He started clearing dishes. "And the house your parents—" "Let someone else buy their memories. I have enough of my own." But the decision nagged through the night. 3 a.m. found me at my laptop reviewing financial statements that confirmed what I already knew. Buying the house would be a rounding error in our accounts. The question wasn't money, but meaning. What did it say about me if I let strangers take the place where I'd learned to dream? What did it mean if I saved those who'd refused to save me? Dawn brought clarity and exhaustion. I sent emails to the property company, my lawyer, and David in that order. By the time he woke, everything was in motion. "You bought it," he said, reading my message over morning coffee. "I bought control. What I do with it remains to be seen." He kissed me, understanding without explanation. Control mattered more than revenge or reconciliation. The power to choose when I'd had so many choices stolen. Whether I became their landlord or their savior, or simply someone who owned their past while they struggled with their present, the decision was mine. Marcel Chen arrived the following week, tall and sharp and radiating the confidence of someone who'd made and lost fortunes before breakfast. He toured our offices, met our team, reviewed our metrics with the thoroughness of someone whose time was too valuable to waste. "You've built something remarkable," he said over lunch, David and Sarah Winters flanking us at the table. "But remarkable isn't enough anymore. You need to be essential, unavoidable, the first name anyone thinks when small business needs marketing." That's the goal. Goals are wishes without strategy. I'm offering strategy. My connections, my experience, my ability to open doors you don't even know exist yet. In exchange for equity, board seat, the chance to be part of something that matters. He leaned forward. "I've funded unicorns that made billions and meant nothing. You're building something that democratizes success. That's worth more than money." David caught my eye, silent communication flowing. We discussed this possibility, the need for someone with Marcel's reach to take us national. But accepting meant sharing control, trusting again when trust had nearly destroyed me once. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course, but don't think too long. Opportunities like this have expiration dates." After he left, Sarah Winters lingered. "He's right, you know. You've outgrown what David and I can offer. Marcel opens doors we can't even knock on." "I know. But you're scared, because last time you shared something you built, they took it all." The accuracy stung. "This is different." "Yes, because you're different. Stronger, smarter. Surrounded by people who amplify your success instead of resenting it." She gathered her things. "Don't let old wounds keep you from new victories." That weekend, I stood in my childhood home for the first time in 3 years. Empty rooms echoed with memories. Here, Sarah had learned to walk. There, I'd spread college applications across worn carpet. The kitchen, where Mom had taught us both to cook, skills Sarah had weaponized while I'd forgotten in favor of takeout and ambition. David waited outside, giving me space to process. I'd told the property company to halt the foreclosure but hadn't decided next steps. The power to destroy or restore rested entirely with me. God complex, maybe. Or just a woman finally holding cards in a game that had been rigged against her. My phone rang. Unknown number with local area code. I almost ignored it, then answered on instinct. "Emily." My mother's voice, older, fragile. "Please don't hang up." "How did you get this number?" "It doesn't matter. We need to talk. About the house. About everything." "Do we because you had years to talk? You chose silence." "We chose wrong." The words came rushed desperate. "Sarah and James, they're not. It's not what we thought. The baby is beautiful, but they fight constantly. He drinks. She spends. We tried to help, but our retirement is gone, and now the house. The house I just bought." Silence, then a sob. "You bought it." "Real estate investment, nothing personal." "Emily, please, we're your parents. We made mistakes, but family." I hung up. Family was David teaching me to trust again. Family was my team staying late because they believed in our mission. Family was Patricia checking in monthly to ensure success hadn't cost my soul. Family was chosen, earned, proven through loyalty when it mattered. Standing in that empty house, I made my decision. Not for them, but for the children who'd grown up here before betrayal poisoned everything. The house would be renovated, modernized, transformed into transitional housing for women entrepreneurs, those leaving bad marriages or starting over after loss. A shelter for dreamers who'd been told their ambitions were too much, too big, too threatening. The Emily Chen Foundation would own it. My childhood home becoming a launching pad for other women's empires. The rooms that had witnessed my abandonment would shelter those refusing to abandon themselves. Sarah's room would become an office, my parents' bedroom a conference space, every corner repurposed from personal pain to public good. "You okay?" David asked when I emerged, plans already forming. "Better than okay. I know what to do with it." I explained on the drive home, watching his smile grow with each detail. This was why we worked. He understood that success meant more than money, that building something meaningful mattered more than settling scores. "Your parents will hate it," he pointed out, "watching their home become a monument to everything they rejected about you. They're welcome to apply for residency. We'll be accepting applications from women starting over after family betrayal." He laughed, taking my hand. "Remind me never to cross you." "You won't. You're too smart for that." Monday morning brought two decisions. First, accepting Marcel Chen's offer with carefully negotiated terms. Second, calling my lawyer to formalize the foundation. By noon, press releases went out. By evening, my phone exploded with interview requests about the CEO turning childhood trauma into community transformation. I ignored them all. The story wasn't about my pain anymore. It was about power. The power to transform rejection into rocket fuel, to build empires from ashes, to choose family instead of accepting blood as destiny. That night, David and I celebrated with champagne on Grandma's porch, city lights twinkling below. Somewhere across Seattle, my birth family dealt with consequences while my chosen family grew stronger. The house that had sheltered my childhood would shelter new dreams. The company born from betrayal would birth opportunities for thousands. "No regrets?" David asked, echoing our conversation from months ago. "Only one," I admitted. "What's that?" "That it took losing everything to realize I was capable of building anything." He pulled me closer, understanding that success was sweeter when earned through fire. Below us, Seattle pulsed with ambition and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, bigger opportunities, harder decisions. But tonight we sat in victory, earned through years of refusing to break. The difficult daughter had become the impossible woman, the one who'd refused to shrink when told she was too much, who'd built higher when they tried to bury her, who'd discovered that family betrayal was just the universe making room for chosen loyalty. And that revelation, that was worth every loss that led to it. The renovation transformed my childhood home into something unrecognizable, yet deeply familiar. Where family photos once hung, motivational quotes from female entrepreneurs lined the walls. Sarah's bedroom became a tech lab with standing desks and whiteboards. My parents' master suite converted into a conference room named after Grandma Charlotte. Every trace of the family who'd lived there was erased, replaced by possibility and ambition that would have horrified them. I stood in the main entrance on opening day watching the first residents arrive. 6 women, each carrying the weight of starting over. A software developer who'd left an abusive marriage, a restaurant owner whose family had disowned her for choosing career over arranged marriage. Stories that echoed mine but belonged wholly to them. Ms. Chen. A woman in her 50s approached clutching a worn laptop bag. "I'm Maria Santos. I just wanted to thank you. After my divorce, I thought I'd lost everything. This place, it's hope." "It's a beginning," I corrected gently. "What you build from here is entirely yours." David appeared at my elbow with coffee and statistics. "Local news wants a statement. 3 national outlets are requesting interviews, and your mother has called 6 times. Let them all wait. Today belongs to these women." He smiled, understanding priorities. The media could spin narratives later. My mother could face continued silence. Right now, 6 women were walking through doors that had once shut me out and that mattered more than headlines or blood ties. The foundation launch coincided with Velocity's explosive growth. Marcel Chen's connections opened doors I hadn't known existed. Fortune 500 companies started calling, wanting our platform for their small business partners. Government contracts materialized. International expansion beckoned. The little startup born from spite was becoming an industry giant. "You need to hire a president," Sarah Winters announced during our November board meeting. "You can't run the foundation and scale Velocity simultaneously." "Watch me." "Emily." Marcel's voice carried the weight of experience. "Burnout doesn't care about your origin story. Delegate or diminish. Your choice." They were right, though, admitting it stung. Success had taught me control was safety, but growth required trust. I hired Dr. Patricia Williams, a former nonprofit executive with steel in her spine and statistics at her fingertips. She took the foundation and transformed it from passion project to powerhouse within 3 months. December brought unexpected visitors to Velocity's headquarters. I was reviewing expansion proposals when reception called up nervous. "There's a James Morrison here. Says that you know him. He doesn't have an appointment." My blood chilled. James. Here. After 3 years of silence standing in the lobby of my empire. "Send him up," I heard myself say. "Have David meet me in my office in 10 minutes. James entered like a ghost from another life. The confident financial analyst had dissolved into someone hollow-eyed and desperate. His suit hung loose, suggesting weight loss. His hands shook slightly as he stood before my desk, measuring the distance between who we'd been and who we'd become. "Emily." His voice cracked on my name. "Thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes." He nodded, gathering courage I'd never seen him need before. "I came to apologize and to warn you." "Warn me." "Sarah's planning something. I don't know what exactly, but she's been researching your company, your contracts, looking for vulnerabilities." He met my eyes finally. "She's desperate. We're broke. The marriage is over and everything but paper. Your parents live with us now since you bought their house. It's hell. And you think warning me earns forgiveness? I think warning you is the least I owe you." He slumped in the chair across from me. "I destroyed everything good in my life for someone who only wanted what you had. Now she has it and hates it and blames everyone but herself." David entered, assessing the situation instantly. He positioned himself beside my chair, protective but not threatening, present but not interfering. Everything James had never been. "What kind of vulnerabilities?" David asked, cutting to business. "She found some old emails from when you were starting out. Things about using your grandmother's house as collateral promises to early investors that might not align with current contracts." James pulled out a flash drive. "I copied everything she had. It's all here." I stared at the drive like it might bite. Trust from the man who'd taught me betrayal. Help from the source of my deepest hurt. "What?" I asked finally. "Because I'm tired of being the villain in everyone's story, including my own." He stood to leave. "Check the files. Prepare accordingly. And Emily, you look happy. Real happy. I'm glad one of us remembered how to be." He left before I could respond. David immediately took the drive to our security team while I sat processing the surreal exchange. My ex-husband warning me about my sister's machinations. The man who'd chosen her over me now seeing what I'd known all along. Sarah didn't want James. She'd wanted my life. Now that she had a version of it, she was hunting for mine again. The files proved legitimate and concerning. Sarah had gathered enough ammunition to cause headaches, if not real damage. Partial communications taken out of context. Early contracts with ambiguous language. Nothing fatal, but enough to feed media narratives about the successful CEO with questionable beginnings. "We need lawyers," David concluded after our security analysis. "We need offense, not defense." I called Marshall. "Remember those connections you mentioned, time to use them." What followed was a masterclass in corporate chess. Marshall's network included journalists who owed favors and lawyers who ate corporate espionage for breakfast. We crafted a narrative that acknowledged early struggles while celebrating current success. Transparency as weapon, truth as shield. Sarah's attack came through a bottom-feeder blog that published her insider information with breathless scandal. Within hours, mainstream outlets picked up our counter-narrative. CEO Emily Chen discusses humble beginnings and meteoric rise, from borrowed house to billion-dollar valuation, the Velocity story. Every allegation was met with context, every insinuation countered with facts. The story became not about questionable origins, but about resilience and transformation. David handled technical rebuttals while I gave selective interviews that painted Sarah as a bitter relative trying to profit from my success. "She's family." I told one sympathetic journalist. I wish her well, but I won't let anyone blood or not threaten the livelihoods of my employees or the dreams of our clients. The killing blow came from an unexpected source. James went public with his own statement revealing the affair timeline, Sarah's calculated pursuit, the destruction of multiple relationships for personal gain. He took responsibility while exposing her patterns. The narrative shifted from successful CEO with sketchy past to woman who overcame systematic betrayal to build an empire. Sarah's credibility evaporated overnight. The blog retracted. Larger outlets moved on to other scandals. She'd aimed for my crown and hit her own reputation instead. On Christmas Eve, she called from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then curiosity won. "You destroyed me," she said without preamble. "Drunk. Definitely drunk." "You destroyed yourself. I just refused to be collateral damage." "I'm pregnant again." The words slurred together. James doesn't know. Might not be his. Everything's falling apart. "Sarah, you were supposed to forgive me, take care of me like always, not become this ice queen in your tower. I became who I needed to be to survive what you did. I loved him. The wail of a child denied a toy. It wasn't about you. Everything was about me, my husband, my house, my life. You wanted what I had because I had it. Now you have it and hate it because it was never about James or love or building something real." "I'm your sister," she whispered. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything until you proved it meant nothing." I hung up, blocked another number, returned to the Christmas party my employees had organized, where chosen families celebrated victories earned through loyalty and shared vision. David found me on the terrace, later city lights twinkling below. "You okay?" "She's pregnant again, destroying another generation." "Not your circus, not your monkeys." He wrapped his arms around me. "You saved yourself. That's all anyone can do." He was right. Sarah would continue her patterns. James would suffer consequences of his choices. My parents would enable and excuse until nothing remained. The cycle would spin without me. "I want to expand the foundation," I said suddenly. "Not just housing, but mentorship, counseling, entire ecosystem for women starting over." "Of course you do." He smiled into my hair. "World domination through female empowerment. Very on brand." That night, snow began falling. Rare for Seattle. Perfect for transformation. We stood watching the city transform under white blankets, everything made new and clean. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Series B funding to finalize. International markets to conquer. Foundation residents to empower. But tonight was for gratitude. For the marriage that ended so a partnership could begin. For the family that abandoned me so I could choose better. For the sister whose betrayal became rocket fuel for an empire built on helping others rise. Inside, my team laughed and celebrated. Through windows, I could see Maria Santos from the foundation showing other residents her business plan. Connections forming, dreams taking shape. The house that had witnessed my abandonment becoming an incubator for achievement. Regrets. David asked our traditional question on significant nights. Just one. "What's that?" "That Sarah will never understand the gift she gave me. By taking everything, she freed me to become everything." He turned me to face him, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. Her loss, my gain. Their empire fell so ours could rise. Inside, someone started music. Voices rose in celebration. My empire built on ashes filled with people who saw ambition as asset rather than threat, who celebrated success instead of resenting it, who chose loyalty when it mattered. Sarah had stolen my life. In return, I'd built 10 better ones. The math of revenge had become multiplication of success, and that transformation was worth every tear that watered its growth. The call came on an unseasonably warm February morning, 3 years after the divorce, while I reviewed blueprints for Velocity's new headquarters. My assistant knocked apologetically. Emily, the property management company, is on line 1. They say it's urgent regarding your rental property on Queen Anne. My childhood home. Now the flagship location of the Chen Foundation, housing 12 women rebuilding their lives. My stomach tightened with premonition. Emily Chen, I answered. Ms. Chen, this is Robert from Cascade Property Management. We have a situation at your Queen Anne property. The previous residents have returned and are refusing to leave. They claim to have tenant rights despite the eviction 3 years ago. The previous residents, but I knew, of course I knew. Your parents, James Morrison and Sarah Morrison, plus 2 small children. They've barricaded themselves inside and are demanding to speak with you directly. I closed my eyes, seeing the inevitable collision I'd avoided for 3 years. They'd burned through resources, exhausted options, and circled back to the beginning. To me. Always to me. When consequences arrived. Call the police, I said. We did. They say it's a civil matter unless someone becomes violent. The residents are sympathetic to the family situation. 2 small children, elderly grandparents. It's complicated. Complicated. Everything with family always was. I'll handle it. Give me an hour. I hung up and found David already standing in my doorway reading my expression. They're back, he said, not a question. Squatting in the foundation house with the children. You don't have to go personally. Send lawyers. Send me. Send anyone but yourself. But we both knew I'd go. This confrontation had been building since the day I'd driven away from their choosing. The foundation residents didn't deserve disruption because my family couldn't accept consequences, and maybe some part of me needed to face them from the position of power I'd built. Come with me, I asked. Try to stop me. We drove in silence, my Tesla gliding through streets that held too many memories. The foundation house came into view looking nothing like the home where I'd grown up. Fresh paint, manicured gardens, signs of life and hope instead of decay and betrayal. A small crowd had gathered. Current residents stood on the lawn, some recording with phones, others comforting Maria Santos, who looked near tears. Through the large front window, I could see movement inside. My family playing house in a space they'd forfeited long ago. I parked and stepped out power suit armor against whatever came next. The crowd parted, recognizing me, their landlord, their benefactor, the woman who'd transformed pain into purpose. Ms. Chen. Maria rushed forward. They showed up this morning with a moving truck. Said this was their home, they had rights. The children. She gestured helplessly. We didn't know what to do. You did exactly right. Are all residents accounted for anyone hurt? We're all safe, just displaced. Not for long. I climbed the porch steps I'd climbed 1,000 times in another life. The doors stood ajar as if they'd been waiting. Inside, déjà vu hit like a physical blow. My parents sat in the living room I'd transformed into a communal workspace. Older, grayer, but wearing the same expressions of disappointed expectation. Sarah stood by the window, thinner than I remembered holding a toddler. Another child, maybe 4, played with blocks that belonged to the foundation's daycare. And James. He sat apart from them, staring at his hands, looking like a man who'd lost himself so completely he'd stopped searching. Emily. My mother stood, arms half extended before catching herself. You came. To remove trespassers. You have 10 minutes to leave voluntarily before I involve law enforcement. Trespassers, Sarah's voice pitched high. This is our family home. This is the Chen Foundation, a registered nonprofit providing transitional housing for women entrepreneurs. You're disrupting their lives and breaking the law. Your law. Sarah stepped forward, child on her hip, the other clinging to her leg. Your rules. Your revenge. Look at these children, Emily. Your nephew, your niece. They're homeless because you had to punish us. I studied the children with detached curiosity. Thomas, the boy who'd cost me everything, had James's eyes and Sarah's golden hair. The girl younger looked tired and confused, innocent of their parents' sins but suffering the consequences nonetheless. You're homeless because you spent 3 years living off my parents' retirement instead of working, because James drank away his savings, because you thought victimhood was a career. The children are homeless because their parents are selfish, not because their aunt refused to enable dysfunction. "How dare you?" Sarah started. "No." My voice cut through her building tantrum. "How dare you? How dare you come to a place built for women escaping situations like the one you created? How dare you traumatize residents who've already survived enough? How dare you use your children as emotional weapons when you've had 3 years to provide for them?" My father stood, age showing in his movements. "Emily, please, we're desperate. Just let us stay until we figure something out." "Like you let me stay when I lost everything." "Oh, wait. You chose the cheaters and told me I deserved abandonment for having ambition." "We were wrong," Mom whispered. "We see that now." "You see that now because you need something." Where was this clarity when I needed parents? When I was sleeping in a budget motel because my sister was in my bed with my husband? David appeared at my shoulder, silent support. His presence reminded me I wasn't alone anymore. Hadn't been for years. The family surrounding me was chosen, loyal, earned through mutual respect rather than blood obligation. 5 minutes, I announced. "Then I call police." "I'll call media," Sarah threatened, shifting the toddler higher. "Tell them how the mighty Emily Chen throws family on the street. Children, elderly parents. See how your precious reputation handles that." "You mean like when you tried to destroy my company with stolen emails? How did that work out?" I pulled out my phone. "I'll save you time. Patricia Williams, the foundation director, has 3 journalists on speed dial. They'd love the story of entitled relatives trying to steal housing from women, actually working to rebuild their lives." The toddler started crying. Thomas. My nephew, who'd never known me as anything but the cold aunt who chose success over family. The little girl hid behind James, sensing adult tensions she couldn't understand. "James." I addressed him directly for the first time. "You warned me about Sarah's plans. That earned you this conversation instead of immediate arrest. Take your children and leave. Whatever custody arrangement you have, whatever disaster your life has become, it stops traumatizing innocent people today." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed and empty. Where do we go? We have nothing. No one. Sarah's family cut her off. Your parents' money is gone. I can't hold a job because I can't stop drinking long enough to show up sober. We're drowning Emily, all of us." "And whose fault is that?" "Mine." The admission came broken. "All mine. I destroyed the best thing in my life for someone who only wanted what you had. Now I'm trapped with consequences while you soar." "Yes," I agreed simply. "That's how consequences work." Sarah exploded. "You're enjoying this, standing there in your designer suit in your stolen house with your perfect new boyfriend gloating while we suffer." "I'm not gloating. I'm enforcing boundaries. You had choices. You chose to betray me, chose to spend instead of save, chose to manipulate instead of work. Every consequence you face flows from choices you made freely. We're family," the wail of the perpetually entitled. "No, we're relatives. Family shows up, supports, celebrates success instead of resenting it. David is family. My employees are family. These residents are family. You're just people who share DNA and burned every bridge I tried to build." 2 police cars pulled up outside. I hadn't called them, but Maria Santos stood on the lawn with her phone protecting the space that protected her. Family behavior. Loyalty earned through action. "Officers are here," I announced. "Decision time. Leave with dignity or leave in handcuffs. Either way you leave." My mother approached, tears streaming. "I carried you for 9 months, raised you, loved you. Doesn't that count for anything?" "It counted for everything until you chose Sarah's happiness over my pain, until you decided traditional values mattered more than truth, until you called me selfish for not accepting betrayal gracefully." I stepped back from her reaching hands. "You loved who you wanted me to be, not who I was. That's not love, it's control." The officers entered, assessing the situation. Professional, neutral, ready to enforce law over sentiment. "These people are trespassing," I explained calmly. They have no lease, no permission to be here. They're disrupting a transitional housing facility and refusing to leave. Sarah made one last play, holding Thomas toward me. Look at him, Emily. Your nephew. He needs shelter, formula, diapers. Are you really going to let pride hurt an innocent baby? I looked at Thomas, then at his mother. I'm going to ensure he has a mother who learns accountability, who stops using him as a prop, who builds something real instead of stealing from others. I turned to the officers. There's a family shelter on Pine Street. Please ensure they arrive safely. The next 20 minutes unfolded like a tragedy in slow motion. Officers escorting my family out while neighbors watched, Sarah screaming about injustice while clutching children who deserved better, my parents' dignity crumbling as they were led to police cars, James moving like a zombie so broken that resistance required energy he didn't possess. Thomas looked back, once confusion clear in eyes that might have loved me in a different timeline. I held his gaze, memorizing features I'd never see grow older. Then they were gone, leaving only echoes, and the faint smell of Sarah's perfume, polluting space meant for healing. The foundation residents gathered in the aftermath, shell-shocked by drama that reminded too many of their own escapes. Maria Santos approached tentatively. Are you all right? This is your home. They had no right to invade it. But they're your family. No, I corrected gently. You are. People who respect boundaries, work toward goals, support each other's growth. That's family. Those people were just relatives who confuse blood with unlimited access. David organized the cleanup while I called Patricia Williams to arrange counseling for any residents triggered by the confrontation. Within an hour, order was restored. The foundation house returned to its purpose. Safe haven for women building better lives, not entitled relatives demanding rescue from consequences. That evening, I sat in my office at Velocity staring at the city lights. David worked quietly nearby, present without pushing. The confrontation replayed in my mind, a final closing of doors I'd left cracked from misplaced hope. They'll be back, he said eventually. People like that always come back. No, that was the last time. They played their final card and lost. Nothing left but accepting the lives they chose. And the children, the question that would haunt me. Thomas and his sister, innocent of their parents' sins, suffering for choices they didn't make. But saving them meant enabling their parents, meant teaching another generation that consequences could be avoided through manipulation, meant sacrificing the 12 women currently sheltered in that house who'd escaped similar dysfunction. Will grow up knowing their parents chose pride over provision. Maybe that knowledge will help them choose differently. I met David's concerned gaze. I can't save everyone. I can only provide opportunities for those willing to save themselves. He crossed to my chair, wrapping arms around me from behind. You did the right thing. Did I... 2 children in a shelter tonight because I wouldn't bend. 2 children whose parents might finally hit bottom hard enough to change. 12 women keeping their safe space. Hundreds of employees whose leader showed that boundaries matter more than blood. He kissed my temple. The right thing isn't always the easy thing. My phone buzzed. Patricia Williams reporting all residents were settled, counseling arranged, and security increased. The foundation would survive this disruption as it had survived others, built on stronger foundations than the family that had shattered at first testing. Later, alone in Grandma's house that had become truly mine, I found the photo album from the estate. Pictures of the family we'd been before ambition divided us. Sarah and me in matching Easter dresses, my parents young and hopeful, all of us smiling, unaware of future fractures. I didn't destroy the album. Didn't hide it, simply closed it and placed it on a shelf with other artifacts of the past, evidence of what was not, what could be. The family in those photos had made their choices. The woman looking at them had made hers. Outside, Seattle hummed with life and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the Series C funding, international expansion, foundation growth, empire building on foundations of chosen loyalty rather than forced obligation. But tonight I sat with the echoes of a confrontation 3 years in the making. The family who'd chosen my sister's betrayal over my pain had faced the woman that choice created, strong, successful, surrounded by chosen family who celebrated rather than resented her rise. They'd wanted me to break when they withdrew their love. Instead, I'd built something unbreakable. They'd wanted me to beg for inclusion. Instead, I'd created my own world where their absence was freedom, not loss. They'd wanted me to save them from consequences. Instead, I'd saved myself and created space for others to do the same. The difficult daughter had won by refusing to play their game. By building her own board with her own rules where success was celebrated, boundaries were sacred, and family was earned rather than assumed. And that victory, costly as it was, tasted sweeter than any reconciliation built on their terms ever could. Moving day arrived with unusual April sunshine, the kind that made Seattle feel like a different city entirely. I stood outside my childhood home, watching professional movers load the last of my parents' possessions onto the truck. 3 months had passed since the confrontation, 3 months of legal notices and ignored deadlines, and finally the court-ordered eviction had teeth. David coordinated with security, while Patricia Williams documented everything. The foundation residents watched from safe distances, understanding this was more than just another eviction. This was the final severing of ties that had been fraying for years. "Storage units paid for 6 months," David reported. "After that, it's on them." I nodded, watching a lifetime of accumulation disappear into the truck. Wedding china my mother had treasured, tools my father had collected, photo albums they'd probably forgotten existed, all headed to a concrete box in Kent, waiting for owners who might never claim them. Sarah emerged from the house last defiant even in defeat. The past months hadn't been kind. Her designer clothes had given way to thrift store finds that didn't quite fit. Her perfectly styled hair hung limp, but her eyes still blazed with the particular fury of someone who believed the world owed her everything. "Satisfied?" she spat, clutching a garbage bag of children's toys. "No, satisfaction would require you learning something from this. You'll just find another victim to blame." "Victim, I'm living in a shelter with 2 babies while you play queen in your castle. You're living in a shelter because you spent 3 years expecting rescue instead of working, because you thought stealing my life meant you wouldn't have to build your own, because even now you see consequences as persecution instead of education." James sat on the lawn, watching with the detached air of someone who'd already checked out. The children were mercifully absent in daycare provided by the shelter. At least they'd be spared this final scene. "You could help us." Sarah's voice dropped to pleading. "1 check, that's all. Just enough to get an apartment start over." "I did help. I bought this house instead of letting it go to foreclosure. Gave you 3 years to figure things out. Warned you repeatedly about deadlines. Help isn't your problem. Accountability is." My father appeared in the doorway, aged a decade in 3 years. "We're ready to go." No fight left, no demands or manipulations, just weary acceptance that their choices had led here. He helped my mother down the steps, her movements careful and defeated. The woman who'd once ruled family dinners with iron, well, now couldn't meet my eyes. "The storage unit information." I handed him the paperwork. "Everything's there. What you do with it is your choice." He took the papers with shaking hands. "I suppose you expect thanks." "I expect nothing. That's the freedom you gave me when you chose sides." They loaded into James's battered car a family portrait in reverse. Everything they'd been reduced to what fit in a sedan and a storage unit. As they pulled away, Sarah rolled down her window for one last volley. "Someday you'll need us. Someday success won't be enough and you'll come crawling back for family." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She was wrong. Success wasn't what sustained me. It was the family I'd built through trust and mutual respect. The employees who stayed late because they believed in our mission. The foundation residents who supported each other. David, who knew every scar and chose to stay anyway. With the property empty, work began immediately. Professional cleaners first erasing any trace of the morning's drama, then contractors fixing damage and preparing for the next resident. By evening, you'd never know a family had imploded here just hours before. "You okay?" Patricia asked as we did final walkthrough. "Better than okay, it's over." Is it families have a way of circling back? Not this time, they burned the last bridge today. That evening, Velocity's quarterly celebration felt more significant than usual. We'd crossed into unicorn territory, billion-dollar valuation built on democratizing marketing for small businesses. Marshall Chen raised a toast to resilience. Sarah Winters praised vision. But I heard something else in the cheerful chaos. Proof that families could be chosen built on shared values rather than shared blood. David found me on the office balcony later, Seattle, sparkling below us. Hell of a day. Hell of a life. Worth it? I considered the question. Worth losing my marriage, my birth family, my original vision of how life should unfold. Worth the nights crying in Grandma's empty house, wondering if ambition had cost too much. Worth becoming someone harder, sharper, less willing to compromise. "Ask me something else," I said finally. "Okay, would you change it?" That was easier. No, every loss led here. To you, to this company, to women building dreams in a house that once crushed mine. I wouldn't change the path, just maybe warn that younger woman about its cost. She wouldn't listen, too busy dreaming big to hear warnings about the price. He was right. The Emily who'd married James, who'd welcomed Sarah, who'd believed love meant giving everything wouldn't recognize the woman standing here. Couldn't imagine choosing career over family boundaries, over blood solitude, over toxic connection. My phone buzzed. Unknown number I almost ignored. Then curiosity won. Emily Chen. "Aunt Emily," a young voice, uncertain. "This is Thomas." My nephew. Calling from where how, I gripped the phone tighter. "Thomas, are you okay? Are you safe?" "We're at the shelter. Mom's crying and Dad's outside and Grandma said I shouldn't call, but I remembered your number from Mom's phone." 4 years old and already navigating adult dysfunction. My heart carefully guarded cracked slightly. "What do you need, Thomas?" I wanted to say sorry for being in your house. Mom said it was ours, but I knew it wasn't because it looked different. A pause. "Are you really rich?" "Mom says you're rich, but mean." "I have money, yes, but being mean or kind isn't about money." "Oh," he processed this. "Mom says family helps family, but you didn't help us. Does that mean we're not family?" The question that cut to everything, from the mouths of babes clarity that adults obscured with justification and emotion. "Family is complicated," I said carefully. "Sometimes people share blood but not values. Sometimes helping looks different than what people want." "I don't understand." "Someday you might. For now, just know that not helping isn't the same as not caring. Sometimes the kindest thing is letting people learn from their choices. Even if it's hard, especially then." Noise in the background, Sarah's voice sharp with panic. The phone rustled, then she was there. "How dare you talk to my son? Haven't you done enough damage?" He called me. And Sarah. "He's old enough to see the truth. Might want to consider what you're teaching him about consequences and blame." She hung up. I stared at the phone, wondering if Thomas would remember this conversation. If someday he'd understand his aunt chose building over enabling. If he'd break the cycle or continue it. "The kids?" David asked. Thomas called. 4 years old and already apologizing for his parents' choices. "Jesus." "Yeah," I pocketed the phone. "Think he'll be okay." With Sarah and James as parents, statistics say no. But statistics also said you'd never recover from what they did to you. Sometimes people surprise us. Inside, the party continued. My chosen family celebrating victories earned through loyalty and shared vision. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The international launch, the foundation expansion, the constant pressure to grow, improve, dominate markets, and lift others while climbing. But tonight was for recognizing how far we'd come, from abandoned wife to CEO, from family scapegoat to industry leader, from woman who'd lost everything to one who'd built something better on the ashes. "Last question," David said as we rejoined the celebration. "Any regrets?" "Just one." The kids, "No. They have to walk their own path, make their own choices. Can't save them without enabling their parents." "Then what?" I watched my employees, my chosen family, toasting success we'd built together. Saw Maria Santos from the foundation showing off her business cards company launched from the house that had sheltered her. Witnessed Patricia Williams mentoring a new resident, passing on wisdom earned through experience. I regret how long I believed their version of who I was. The difficult daughter who wanted too much, the selfish wife who chose career over family, the cold sister who couldn't forgive. I let their narrative define me even while building my empire. Took years to realize I wasn't difficult. I was just too much for people who preferred women small and manageable. David raised his glass to the room. To being too much. To being exactly enough, I corrected. The toast rippled through the crowd. My people, my family, built on respect rather than blood choice, rather than chance shared values, rather than shared history. Somewhere across Seattle, my birth family struggled with consequences of choices they'd made freely. Sarah would blame me forever. James would drink himself deeper into oblivion. My parents would enable until nothing remained. Thomas and his sister would grow up in that dysfunction, maybe repeating it, maybe escaping it. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was this room full of success, this company changing lives, this man beside me who saw ambition as attractive rather than threatening, this life built on the ruins of what they'd destroyed. The reckoning had come and gone, not with the dramatic confrontation of fiction, but with the quiet finality of movers and legal documents. They'd wanted me to break. Instead, I'd built. They'd wanted me to beg. Instead, I'd thrived. They'd wanted me to save them. Instead, I'd saved myself and created space for others to do the same. The difficult daughter had become an impossible woman, too successful to need them, too strong to want them, too wise to save them from themselves. And that transformation, painful as its birth had been, was worth every lost connection that had made it possible. 5 years. That's how long it had been since Sarah moved into my apartment with her suitcases and calculated tears. 5 years since my life split into before and after. I stood in the conference room of our Manhattan office watching the city pulse 30 floors below, preparing for the announcement that would change everything. Ready. David appeared at my elbow, tablet in hand, showing the press release that would go live in minutes. Velocity Marketing Solutions had accepted a $3 billion acquisition offer, not selling out, scaling up. We'd maintain autonomy, keep our mission, but with resources to reach every small business in America. The Forbes headline wrote itself, "From Betrayal to Billions, Emily Chen's 5-Year Journey." Patricia Williams had flown in from Seattle, where she now ran the Chen Foundation full-time. Under her leadership, we'd expanded to 12 cities, housing over 300 women rebuilding their lives. She raised her coffee mug in silent toast from across the room. 2 minutes. Marshall announced, his usual calm tinged with excitement. This deal vindicated his early faith, turning his investment into a fortune. Sarah Winters, who'd become more friend than board member, smiled. "Remember when you could barely ask for $2 million? Now look at you." But I wasn't looking at the numbers. I was thinking about Thomas's call last month. 7 years old now, sneaking his mother's phone to reach the aunt he'd been taught to hate. His sister, Emma, 5, whispering hello in the background. "Mom lost another job," he'd reported matter-of-factly. "Dad's not living with us anymore. Grandma and Grandpa are sick a lot." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you really? Mom says you hate us." "I don't hate anyone, Thomas. Hate takes too much energy." "Oh," he'd paused. "I'm good at math. My teacher says I'm advanced. That's wonderful. Keep working hard. Mom says being smart doesn't matter if you're mean, but you're smart and rich, so maybe she's wrong about some things. 7 years old and already questioning the narrative. Maybe there was hope after all. 30 seconds, David counted down. I thought about the journey, the motel nights after finding them in my bed, the courtroom where I lost my house, the family dinners I'd never attend, the relationships severed by their choosing. All of it leading here to this moment of triumph that tasted like vindication, but felt like freedom. Live, Marshall announced. Within minutes, phones buzzed with congratulations. Business journalists requesting interviews, competitors offering partnerships. The empire I'd built on the ashes of betrayal, now valued in billions, impossible to ignore or diminish. But the notification that made me pause came from an unexpected source, my mother's number unblocked after years for Thomas's sake. Saw the news, her text read. Your grandmother would be proud. We all are. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at the words. 5 years too late. Pride offered only when success became undeniable. Contact attempted when my value soared beyond their ability to dismiss. Classic conditional love available only when I no longer needed it. I deleted the message without responding. Everything okay? David asked, reading my expression. My mother, suddenly proud now that I'm worth billions. Funny how that works. Predictable, more like. I pocketed my phone. Ready for the interviews. The next hours blurred with media attention I'd once avoided, but now wielded strategically. Every interview mentioned the Chen Foundation. Every quote emphasized supporting women entrepreneurs. The narrative wasn't just my success, it was proof that betting on ambitious women paid dividends. Between interviews, my assistant handed me a note. This came by courier, said it was urgent. Inside James's shaky handwriting, congratulations, you deserved all of it. I'm getting help. Finally. 90 days sober. Wanted you to know I'm trying to be the father my kids deserve. No agenda, just truth. J. I folded the note carefully. Too little too late for us, but maybe not for Thomas and Emma. Recovery was possible even for those who'd fallen furthest. I wouldn't help enabling disguised as kindness had caused enough damage, but I could hope, for the children's sake. Final interview, Patricia announced. Then dinner to celebrate. The foundation women arranged something special. The last journalist asked the question they all danced around. Your success story includes overcoming personal betrayal, any reconciliation with family. Family isn't about blood. I answered, practiced but genuine. It's about who shows up when you're building from nothing, who celebrates your wins without resentment, who sees your ambition as inspiration, not threat. I'm grateful for my birth family. They taught me exactly what I didn't want to recreate. That evening, dinner filled a private room at Manhattan's finest restaurant. My chosen family had grown beyond counting. The original Velocity team, foundation graduates now running their own companies, investors who'd become mentors and friends, David at my right side, Patricia at my left, surrounded by people who'd earned their seats through loyalty and shared vision. Maria Santos, whose catering company now had 3 locations, raised a toast. To Emily Chen, who didn't just survive betrayal, she transformed it into a ladder for the rest of us to climb. Others spoke. Stories of chances given, dreams, funded paths, illuminated by someone who refused to let bitterness poison her success. With each testimony, the truth crystallized. Losing my first family had freed me to build a better one. Betrayal had become a gift wrapped in thorns. Speech, someone called, and gradually the chant built until I stood. 5 years ago, I lost everything I thought mattered. My marriage, my home, my family's support. I slept in a budget motel wondering how I'd survived their choosing my sister's betrayal over my pain. I paused, scanning faces that reflected understanding. But surviving wasn't enough. So I built, first a career, then a company, then a foundation, then this, a family bound by choice, rather than chance. You want to know the secret? Stop trying to earn love from people committed to misunderstanding you. Start building lives with people who see your strength as a foundation, not a threat. Applause filled the room. David's hand found mine under the table squeeze, saying what words couldn't. We'd built this together, not just the company, but the life surrounding it. Partnership without possession, love without limitation. Everything my first marriage had promised, but never delivered. Later in our hotel suite overlooking Central Park, I found myself thinking about Sarah. Still in Seattle, according to LinkedIn, selling real estate unsuccessfully. Still married to James, according to Thomas, though barely. Still blaming everyone else according to the universe's predictable patterns. Regrets? David asked our traditional question on significant nights. No, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. Not anymore. Not even about the kids. Thomas has my number, calls when he can. I've made sure college funds exist when he's ready. Same for Emma. That's love within boundaries, support without enabling. Maybe they'll understand someday. And if your family comes calling now that you're officially a billionaire, they will. Success this public draws all kinds of people, including those who abandoned you when you needed them most. But my door stays closed, not from spite, from wisdom. Some bridges once burned should stay ash. He pulled me closer, Manhattan glittering below us like earthbound stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The acquisition integration, international expansion, foundation growth, endless demands on time and energy and resources. But tonight was for gratitude, for the marriage that ended so this partnership could begin. For the family that rejected me so I could choose better. For the sister whose betrayal became rocket fuel, launching me toward dreams I'd never dared imagine. My phone buzzed with one last message. Thomas texting from a number I didn't recognize. Saw you on TV, Mom threw a plate. Dad said you looked happy. Are you? I typed back, yes. Happier than I ever knew was possible. Study hard, dream big. Don't let anyone make you small. Like Mom tried to do to you, 7 years old and seeing too clearly. Like anyone who says your dreams are too big, they never are. Okay, love you, Aunt Emily. The words stopped my breath. Love. Despite years of poisoned narrative, despite distance enforced by dysfunction, despite everything, connection survived. Love you too, Thomas, always have. I set the phone aside and found David watching with soft eyes. He loves you. Kids see truth before adults teach them to ignore it. Think you'll ever meet them when they're older. When they're ready, if they choose it, my door's open to them in ways it'll never be to their parents. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with ambition and possibility. Somewhere in Seattle, my first life continued its dysfunctional patterns. But here now, surrounded by chosen family and earned success, I finally understood the gift in their betrayal. They'd freed me to become exactly who I was meant to be. Not the accommodating wife or forgiving sister or dutiful daughter, the woman who built empires from ashes, who transformed rejection into rocket fuel, who discovered that family wasn't about blood, it was about who stood beside you when you insisted on becoming impossible. The story that began with a sister stealing a husband had become something larger, a testament to resilience, proof that losing everything could be the first step to gaining what actually mattered, evidence that the most devastating betrayals often carried the seeds of the greatest triumphs. No regrets, I repeated to David, to myself, to the glittering city that had witnessed my transformation. Not one. And for the first time in 5 years, I meant it completely. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed every painful step of my journey from betrayed wife to billionaire CEO. But here's what I hope you take away. Success isn't about the money or the revenge. It's about refusing to let someone else's choices define your worth. Have you ever been told you were too ambitious, too difficult, too much? I want to hear your story. Share in the comments below how you transformed rejection into fuel for your own empire, whatever that looks like for you. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever chosen yourself over toxic family, built success from betrayal, or refused to shrink when told you were too much, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of women who turn their pain into power. Share this with someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end, it's often the beginning of becoming who you were meant to be. Remember, families aren't always about blood. Sometimes the best family is the one you build with people who celebrate your ambition instead of resenting it. Keep building, keep rising, and never apologize for being too much for people who prefer you small. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May your own transformations be just as powerful with far less pain along the way. Until next time, keep building your empire, whatever that looks like for you.